America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you all very much for that. Is Mr. Middlestat on with us today? Oh, hang on a minute. Lisa?
I am here.
Could you go? I don't see Mr. Middlestat anywhere on my list unless I'm missing him. Could you go ahead and take roll for me, and board members, as Ms. Birkmeyer is taking roll, if you could please announce what city and state you're participating in the meeting from, that would be great. Lisa?
Ms. DeWitt?
Oh, you're muted there, Marie. I see your lips moving, but I don't hear you.
Okay, is that it?
Now I got you.
Yes, now we got you.
All right, sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute.
I think it just delays.
I'm still here, though.
And where are you joining us from, ma'am?
Chesterfield, Michigan.
Thank
You want
you.
my address?
Nope.
Good.
Mr. Moses?
New Baltimore, Michigan.
Mr. DeRue?
Chesterfield, Michigan.
Ms. Echevetti Hendershot? Is she on the call?
I'm here, but he's
Oh,
not
there you-
allowing me to unmute.
We got you now.
We can hear you.
Yeah, he did not have it set up as we were co-hosts, so it will not let you unmute at that option. New Baltimore, Michigan.
And Mr. Green?
I am in New Baltimore, Michigan as well.
And I am in Chesterfield.
Can we have one more reach out there for Mr. Middlestat? Has anybody seen him or on the call here at all?
I'll send him a message.
We'll wait 30 seconds to see if he responds back to you, Janine.
Hello?
Hey, they're waiting for you to log in. Are you logging in anytime soon?
In about 2 minutes, I'm having some problems, so I'll be.
I just connected with him. He's having some technical issues logging in. He said he should be in within 2 minutes.
All right. If you guys don't object, we'll sit tight here for a minute or two to see if Mr. Middlestat can jump on before we turn the meeting over to Mr. McDonald for the reconfirmation of our instruction delivery. All right, why don't we turn it over to Mr. McDonald so he can get us rolling into our agenda. Mr. McDonald?
All right, thank you, President Green. Good evening, Board. It is my pleasure to reconfirm our Return to Learn plan, and we're going to get started with the PowerPoint. I'll review for you all kind of what we recapped last Thursday's meeting, and also it will incorporate some changes made by the Governor and Department of Health and Human Services. So if we go to the next slide, this will be our November reconfirmation. This is slide just a quick reminder of why we're doing what we're doing tonight. It is required by Public Act 165. Go to the next slide. So again, our reconfirmation each month will include these three criteria. They'll have we'll reconfirm how instruction is being delivered. We'll take public comment from parents and guardians, and then I'll review for you the two-way weekly interaction rates. And again, these are reflections from changes made on November the 12th and the recent announcement from our governor. So if we go to the next slide, I'll recap, start with our preschool. And preschool, most of preschool is in person. There is a virtual component for an ECSC, some ECSC students based on their student need, but the majority of it is in person. And also, if we move now to elementary, again, continuing as of the November 12th meeting, we have both in-person and virtual classes for our elementary students. And again, virtual can be live synchronous instruction with live streaming and also some asynchronous. And we were able to, meaning pre-recorded lessons, we were able to and continue to separate our teachers from face-to-face and virtual at the elementary level. And again, all of the instruction is being provided on our Schoology learning management platform. Moving to the next slide, in the secondary level. So as of November 18th, in accordance with the announcement made, all high school students are virtual. And combining that with what was said at the last meeting on the 12th, the announcement starts from the governor, put us through to December the 8th, and board action last Thursday took us through January 4th. As stated, we would review it each month to make adjustments as needed. That would include our middle school, where we would be virtual starting Monday, November the 23rd, again through the January 4th, and again with the opportunity to review it in the December meeting. Virtual instruction will be both live, synchronous, and asynchronous. Any teachers that are providing asynchronous instruction will follow up with their students daily with a two-way interaction, which means something initiated by the teacher and returned back from the student. And that can be accomplished a variety of ways: a call, an email, completion of work, things of that nature. Again, using Schoology as our learning management system. We review on the next slide, our higher level of supports. We continue to offer our English language learners support through a tutor assigned. She's currently working virtually. And we also had our self-contained special education classrooms return early in a hybrid model. So this is basically a repeat of the last presentation. And we do continue to provide technology supports by appointment for students and families that continue to have some struggles with their technology. So the next, that's a recap of what we discussed at the last meeting, which was less than a week ago, and incorporating the announcement from Sunday. On the next slide, I've updated our weekly two-way interactions. If you remember from the previous weeks, they started out in the 80s, and we are stuck in the 97%, and that's very, the requirement is 75, so we are very much above that, and we have not been able to break the 98, but that's due to a variety of reasons of just, if you don't complete the two-way, if it's one way, we're not able to count that as a two-way, so that is a pretty solid rate of interactions. Our teachers have been doing a great job of their interactions. So that is basic requirement. We do have a later requirement to take the public comment about this plan. And I do have for you, based on the last meeting, we did put together, if we go to the next slide, and we could take the public comment whenever you wish, President Green, but we also did put together special education information for you. There was a request to kind of take a look at how we support our special ed students and how we could support them in a virtual environment. And some of these had to be adjusted based on the governor's announcement. But so it is your choice if we'd like to take the public comment on the current reconfirmation, or if you'd like me to proceed with the special ed information.
Why don't you go ahead and proceed with the special ed information, because there certainly was some questions that arose from public comment at the last meeting. So perhaps we can kind of kill two birds, sir.
Okay, very well. So if we go to the next slide, I want to also throw in there the reminder of where our COVID case reporting is on the website. If you find that, you can find all the information. It's updated daily. And we did pull together some of that information for you in a separate presentation. So if we go to the next slide, I would invite Frank Cusimano, if we need to get him unmuted. He should be in the audience here. He's our special ed supervisor. And of course, like we talked about during the Thursday meeting, there were some questions about special ed and support. So I would invite Frank Cusimano, our special ed supervisor, to provide an update, again, with some adjustments that we had to make based on the governor's announcement and the work being virtual where it can be virtual and face-to-face when it is necessary. So Frank, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, Frank, take it away, sir.
Okay. So we can go to the initial slide. Probably going to start with our severe needs students and understanding that if we do have to go remote, there are populations that just don't tolerate virtual instruction as well. We want to ensure that we are attempting to meet their needs as much as possible. So the next slide will just give a very basic rationale. Again, we want to try to ensure the needs of our cognitively impaired students while also ensuring student and staff safety. We know that depending upon their needs and therapies, if any in-person supports are allowed and permitted by the government or by the state, we would like to offer those opportunities with some kind of a hybrid model where we can break the classroom up into groups A and B, minimize the amount of students that are receiving support at any given time, better ensure social distancing and safety for all involved. And our students did tolerate this hybrid model very well in September prior to the district returning in person. So again, it would be very easy for transportation purposes, food services, and other related therapies if we had to return to this model. The next slide we could go to. The converse of that, even though right now, I think as we are entering into this board meeting, there is the presumption that K-5 will remain in person. I wanted to bring up the prospect of even our elementary CI programs adopting a hybrid model, simply because we have encountered some difficulties with these programs as of late, ensuring social distancing, adherence to mask wearing. These are very young populations chronologically that can be much younger than what you would expect for a 5 to 7-year-old to behave. These are students that require hand-over-hand guidance, toileting assistance, close proximity to adults, support with hygiene. It is very difficult to adhere to the mandates and safety protocols. We've had teachers and paras report COVID positives. We've had classroom closures, quarantines. We've had staffing vacancies this month, which have required classes to be shut down for select days due to sub-coverage difficulties. Being that there was the prospect of having a hybrid model for our middle school, high school, it may prove to be in the best interest of the elementary program as well to adopt a similar model where we can minimize the amount of students at any given time. We can provide more conscientious support. This was something just brought, to the board's attention just for consideration moving forward, even though, as I said, there is still a prominent in-person expectation with K-5. So I just wanted to bring this up for the board's consideration. We can go on to the next slide. As far as supporting IEP students during remote learning, we're going to focus predominantly with secondary here, being that this is the population that will be remote. For the middle school purposes, our RSC, which is the Resource Support Center, this typically, when we're in person, is staffed by special ed teacher or paraprofessionals. For virtual purposes, for all 6 periods, this classroom can be virtual and is available each hour for potential supports as students need. Back in September, computer labs were opened, and those were available for students who needed technology support, students without access to internet, computers. Of course, that was based on parent transportation. That can also continue and be a prominent support during the remote period on site. And then as far as virtual instruction from the teachers, after the 139 dismissal, at the end of the day for the middle school teachers, all resource room and caseload teachers, based on student needs, can schedule opportunities to Zoom with students and provide much needed support, whether that's a small group, whether that's individualized one-on-one. These are the basic considerations for virtual and remote learning at the middle school. And then finally, with the high school, the high school does not have an RSC program with which I'm going to speak about as with the middle school. However, back in September, labs were also opened during this time. If that would still be a consideration, that could be on site and available 1st through 6th period. And then for the high school, I can continue talking. In addition to the labs being available, our high school special ed teachers know that after their classes and sessions are done, after the 1247 dismissal, again, based on student needs, can and will schedule virtual supports and sessions, Zoom meetings. Our caseload teachers carefully monitor grades, student progress, and all students who are in need of additional support will be encouraged to seek it. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Cusumano? All right.
Yeah, I have one question. I'm sorry. Mr. Cusumano, just doing the hybrid for the K-5, you were thinking of that would be a good idea even if we stay with K-5 face-to-face, or is that if we go virtual K-5, them to stay hybrid?
Sure. As the program stands now, given the concerns we've endured over the past few weeks, we are having difficulty ensuring the longevity of the program. As I said, we had to quarantine and close one of the programs for some time. We've had multiple staff members, paras out. We last week had to shut the program down on select days due to sub-coverage shortages.
No,
it's very hard to.
I just wanted. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. It is difficult to maintain consistency, which is something that these young children very much need. The program was essentially being interrupted quite often, trying to maintain a 5-day-a-week program with the amount of students at any given time, which was one of the reasons why I just simply wanted to bring this prospect up. If it were to return hybrid, it might be more manageable for us with a less student account at any given time to try to secure these programs' consistency.
Now, if we did vote to go virtual K-5, would you still want hybrid option for those students? 'Cause it
Absolutely.
seems like they need it.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
I have a question.
Hey, Marie, before you speak, Mike, I think we're going to need you to dial in on a landline. You're breaking up on the signal for us, sir. So if you could possibly grab a cell phone and dial in, that might help us out. Marie, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, do we presently have a hybrid model for our E ECSE programs?
No, ma'am. We are currently face-to-face 5 days a week, full-time, as with the rest of the K-5.
Okay, so this, you are recommending for E ECSE as well as our CI programs that they go a hybrid model? Is that what you're saying?
Back in September, we had included that. At this time, the ECSE programs have not endured any of the difficulties or complications that the CI, elementary CI programs have. Therefore, it didn't seem pertinent in the moment to develop a hybrid contingency for them at this time. But we did have one in place in September. We could easily return to one should we be forced into a district-wide virtual.
So when you started in September, the ECSE was never hybrid.
No, it was in September.
It was in September.
Yes.
And when did it go full numbers, every day?
Once we returned, I believe October 5th, the beginning of October, once district-wide returned full-time, all self-contained programs returned full-time.
Okay, and what are the numbers? They seem to be holding their own. And what is that, a max of 12 per class?
Correct.
So you're still able somewhat in those programs to social distance because of
Yes,
the
we have-
lower numbers?
Correct. We have less than 12. Clearly it is a challenge with that program. I won't say that it's an easy feat. We just simply haven't encountered the difficulties that we've had with some of the elementary CI programs. And that's not to say that it can't happen. I do say, I think we were very comfortable with the hybrid model that we had at the beginning of the year. And I feel if we had to go back to that in any of our self-contains, we could effectively do so.
Okay. And how are the numbers in the CI? Are they running over 12, but maybe up to 15?
Yes. So the CI classrooms can accommodate a maximum of 15 students with
Right.
one, educator, with the support aide.
Sarah.
We have met 15 in these programs. Obviously, we have a couple students that are virtual, but they tend to be a little larger than the ECSE classrooms.
But we have had a number of problems with having to quarantine and
Yes,
other difficulties. Okay, thank you.
correct.
Anybody else? Any questions for Mr. Kuzmano before we move on? Anybody, any questions for Mr. McDonald before we open it up to the public comments? All right, I'm not hearing anybody. So thank you, Mr. Kuzmano. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. If you two gentlemen could stay nearby there, I'm now going to open up as directed. At this point, we'll take public comments from parents and legal guardians of students enrolled in the district. I'm assuming Mr. Sizemore is going to be able to open some folks who either have their hand up or pre-registered. I would ask that if your comments are not specifically related to the reaffirmation that we're currently doing, that the board will be moving on very shortly, that you just let us know that, and let us know to keep you on the list for the open forum that is coming up. Tim, I don't see you on my screen, but do you have anybody who's looking to speak to us at this point?
I do not at this point.
Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion as to how the board wants to proceed. We can leave things as are. We can obviously make some changes. Before we do that, I see Mr. Woodside on my screen. I'll try to throw it to you, sir, after every topic, because I know it's difficult because I can't see you in my boardroom. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Woodside, before we move on?
Well, I think that Frank had. Shame on me. I'm still having problems with my. But you, Frank? Yeah, move the mic. Frank had did the follow-up on special ed, and that's what came from the last board meeting. So I think we covered it. That was some of the biggest questions we had on what we're going to do. I think Frank covered it, and I know they're going to be contacting.
Okay. Well, very good. I
Is,
guess I'll open it to the board. What is the pleasure of the board at this time?
I would like to reopen the topic of elementary, also going on to virtual because of the state and the whole county, the state, the country. And I have had a large number of concerns that have been voiced by the teachers. We are not social distancing because we have some classrooms with 25 students in them. And I think that the county is reflecting that we need to be concerned, have those concerns with elementary. And I know how difficult it is for them on remote. And I understand how difficult it is for parents that having to work, and I understand all of that, but I feel that we need to respond proactively to the situation throughout the county, and I think we need to revisit going virtual.
All right. Mr. Witt wants to open that discussion. There is not currently a motion on the floor, but why don't I open up to the rest of the board members? I see Mike, I see you've unmuted. Are you able to speak at this point?
I don't know. I've called in, but I can't unmute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So we're just having a discussion right now?
Correct. Marie, Mr. Witt has proposed that perhaps we follow the lead from our secondary of last week with sending our elementary to virtual. There's not a motion on the floor. It's just a discussion.
Okay. I guess I would like to throw something else out there to discuss, if possible. Would it be feasible maybe to give board authority or maybe sort of like an emergency authority to our superintendent or to maybe a committee of people in the central office to be able to individually close schools down as they see they need rather than blanket closing? I don't see if there's an outbreak in one elementary school to shut down all of them. And I think it takes too long to reconvene as a board to make these decisions. And I just would like to discuss that. I don't know. And like I said, I know the snow day option, what we were talking when we're short teachers and stuff is great, but I'm thinking more along the lines of like, you'll be able to shut it down for 2 weeks and say, hey, we got to let this settle down over here, but we're not having anything at this school, so we can leave them open.
All right. Mr. Moses has possibly proposed that we would give the authority to Superintendent Woodside to close individual schools for more than just a day, which as we experienced Monday and last Friday, we shut down due to staffing. Mr. Moses proposed that we would allow Superintendent Woodside to close schools for a longer term on an individual basis based on COVID concerns and quarantining. Mike, is that correct? Am I paraphrasing correct?
Yeah, if you have an outbreak in a school, to be able to close that school down with way less notice, you know what I mean? Instead of having to reconvene as a board in an emergency meeting, he would have the authority to do that, or even a committee if he would rather have it that way.
So I'll share my thoughts and then I'll certainly throw it to the rest of the board members for feedback on those 2 points. I've had many conversations in the last 6 days, plethora of emails, and they're almost split right down the middle between the staff and teachers that have reached out to me, both for and against returning elementary back to virtual. And it's, if I'm keeping track, it's probably 51, 49%. It is right in the middle. I know all the board members are seeing a lot of the emails that I'm seeing, but I did get some texts and some phone calls today. So I, again, as far as staff and teachers are concerned, it's split down the middle. I haven't heard a ton of feedback from parents either way, honestly. So with that, I know I can't see everybody on my screen, but I know we've got 3 or 4 other board members there that we haven't heard from. So why don't I go to Mr. Drew? I know you're on with us. Any thoughts? I apologize. I'm going to keep working around you guys because I can't see you all, and I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Mr. Drew, any thoughts?
Well,
All right. Can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead, John.
I guess my question, I agree with what Mike's saying. I almost think the superintendent has that power now. Maybe he doesn't, but if he doesn't, then yes, that's something we could do. But in reading those emails and in talking to a lot of the teachers, my biggest concern right now is there seems to be some skepticism on whether or not the numbers being reported are right. In quite a few of those emails, I don't know if other board members seen that common theme, is that there's more cases and more quarantine buildings in the elementaries than what is being reported. They're only reporting the ones that come, the quarantines that come out of school, not ones that are quarantined because they might have been next to a family member or this or that. Is there any, can anybody speak to that in the administration? Is that, how are we accurately counting all the cases and all the quarantines in the elementary? That'd be my first question. It just seems
So
like
we probably need to defer that to Superintendent Woodside, as he did make that presentation last week, for a little bit of comment on that. If you could, Mr. Woodside.
Yeah, I think what might be confusing people is the numbers that the health department is showing, and then the numbers that Anchor-based schools is showing. What we did is with that presentation I had done at the last meeting, we're using that to update every Friday, the same one. I do have it updated if the board wanted that information. But I think the confusion might be, John, that the health department the health department shows it by school district, but it's really by zip code. So their numbers are going to, in some instances, show higher, and that's exactly what they're doing. If it's a COVID issue at home that impacts more people, those are in the health department numbers. If it's at the school and it's a school related, like COVID related to school, teacher, student, quarantine, those are the numbers that we're showing. And all the numbers that we are showing, they're updated, they're accurate. They change every day. There's a big, they change every day. They go up and they go down as students and staff come off of quarantine. So I'm hoping that answered it.
yeah, I think it's more, yeah. I mean, as long as we're counting all the cases, I would be in tune with what Mr. Moses is saying, is do it by building, like we said last meeting. I mean, I hate like heck to come in here to this meeting, not preparing anybody for the fact, or any parents for the fact that we might be coming in tonight and changing our mind again. To blanket the whole elementary. I think the building by building approach, the parents I've talked to all think that that's a reasonable solution. And, if we're putting the right numbers up there on the webpage like we have been, and they can see that there's an outbreak starting to happen at their particular school, they can be, they can kind of plan that maybe that school is going to shut down for a little bit. But I know there's a big push by some to try to shut down the elementaries right now. I just don't know if the numbers warrant it at this point. I see other schools in Macomb County are doing it. But what's the reason? Obviously, I shouldn't say that. Obviously, there's an outbreak out there. There's a lot of stuff going on. But if our numbers at Anchor Bay, if we're doing the things we need to do in those schools to mitigate our cases, then let's keep those kids in school as long as possible, because most likely at some point we're gonna have to shut them down.
All right, John, thank you, sir. Let me move on to Ms. Birkmeyer. Any comments or feedback of this topic?
I support Mike's idea. I think, I think we, the members of the board, know, just trying to find a time to meet sometimes can be difficult for everybody to do on a quick notice if we needed to take quick action. And in a situation like this, I don't think, we don't want to try and meet without somebody either, because of how important something like this is. So that alone is always like a worry of mine, to not leave somebody out of a meeting. So I support this as well. And I also think, we need to look at it as the building by building basis. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in a few weeks. And we don't know, things could change. The governor could impose something anyway. And I agree with John as well. I'd like to keep kids in school as long as we can, and do as much as we can for that reasoning. So I would support Mike's idea to that degree, and kind of give the reins to Mr. Woodside, or like Mike said, if he wants to establish maybe a smaller committee or something, just so that we can kind of keep control over our buildings individually. Because, I don't want to shut down all schools if we only had an issue at one. So I think this helps us to identify and keep kids engaged as long as possible in a better manner. And, but we can also pull back and keep people safer if things start to change even more.
Ms. Hendershot, any thoughts or feedback, ma'am?
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, I like the record to reflect that Mr. Middlestat has been in attendance for about 20 minutes, and I believe he needs to have co-host added to him so that he can unmute himself. So if you could pass it on to Mr. Sizemore. Secondly, I like to add to the discussion that I believe the teachers should be able to work from home. Who's ever assigned to a virtual classroom right now through the secondary process, I think they should be able to pick if they need the resources in the classroom, then they can go into the classroom. If they have the necessary resources at home, they should be able to work from home. I think it just adds an unnecessary burden to those teachers right now to be having to go into the classroom, especially considering it almost runs counterproductive to what the executive order said. If a job can be done remotely, it should be done remotely. So I'd like to add that to the discussion. I do agree with Ms. DeWitt. I understand what Mr. Moses is suggesting. I understand we want to keep our little ones in school as much as possible. But I have a bigger concern here about protecting our teaching pool. And those little ones may not be getting as sick, but if they are exposing our teachers and they are needing to take a 2-week hiatus from the classroom, we're going to run into a significant issue to where we're running out of teachers. And if we can protect our elementary teachers right now for the next 3 weeks, along with everybody else, that maybe we'll have the teachers available should we need them upon return. But, we know we're going to have people travel for the holidays. They're going to be coming in contact, unfortunately, with potentially the virus. Every day the numbers are going up. And do we really want to risk our youngest learners and those classroom teachers when, from what I can see here, only 4 districts in Macomb County have not gone virtual. Clintondale, Lakeshore, New Haven, and South Lake, and 3 of them simply have not had their board meeting yet. So, and And I believe it was posed today by our union president that what are we doing differently to protect our teachers if we decide to go in the counter opposite position as all these other districts that chose to protect students and staff. And if that's the case, I want to hear that plan, because if you have 18, 19 districts that have made that decision, I'm not thinking any one of them are making poor decisions. So what is the thought process behind what are we doing differently that is going to protect those people? And if that's the case, I want to hear that point by point by point layout, because I need to protect my teachers. Our teacher pool is quickly dwindling. I mean, that's my biggest concern. Yes, I want my little guys in school. Completely agree with Lisa, Mike, John about that. I have no problem giving Mr. Woodside the authority to make the individualized decisions. I also find that to be very inconsistent. You know, some kids in school, some kids out of school. I can tell you it's adding a lot of stress to the students' lives. Kind of like a fish out of water type situation, in school, out school, in school, out school. I understand it's hard on the families. We're not going to make the perfect decision here, but we have to make it based on science and evidence and protecting our teachers the best we can.
All right, and then hopefully we've got Mr. Middlestat unmuted. Mr. Middlestat, are you out there?
Hear me?
I can, if you could speak up a little bit. You sounded just a little bit muffled, but you're unmuted.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion that we continue the plan as currently we have, that secondary is virtual, elementary is face-to-face, and just reaffirm that the superintendent does have the authority along with his team to close schools as required.
All right, so I've got a motion now on the floor by Mr. Middlestat that the elementary continue at its current setup, and also reaffirming giving Superintendent Woodside the authority to close down schools as he sees fit for perhaps even longer than a day, if there's an outbreak that, you know, or some kind of numerical situation that would force him into that position. Do I have a second?
May I ask another question?
You may, ma'am.
Is it possible for the board to consider an additional week after Thanksgiving week that we be remote for 1 week to give some time for those that over that Thanksgiving time who may have had contact with someone, that week would give us time to know if any of those individuals have been infected and are coming back to school?
Mr. Middlestat, are you open to amending your motion to add 1 additional week after the Thanksgiving break for our elementary to remain virtual?
Just maintain the current motion.
All right, so the motion is still on the floor without that change. The current motion is still proposed. Do I have a second?
I'll second it so we can get some, so the discussion will continue, but I do want to, well, go ahead. I'd like to say something after a second.
Absolutely. So I've got a motion by Mr. Middlestat, supported by Mr. Drew. Mr. Drew, since you spoke, go ahead and let's hear what you got for us, sir.
Well, first off, I'd like to, the board to, and Mr. Middlestat, if you look at, Mr. Cusimano made the comment tonight, or kind of gave us his opinion on what we should do at the elementary level. And if we should look at that, if we do stay face-to-face, first off. Second, to Ms. Hendershot, the only thing I'd like to say is, I think, what are we doing different, I guess, was the question that the union president posed to us. And I think in the beginning, when this all, beginning of the year, when we voted to go choice, then we voted to go virtual, then, a little bit later, we went back to, we did a lot of things as blanket changes. And I think the difference is that we're going building by building. We're trying to be responsible about, and kind of get the parents, not, this isn't just because there's a parent uproar if we vote this way or that way, but kind of bring the parents along with us, that we're gonna go building by building, we're gonna take a responsible approach. If the numbers and the cases warrant it, we're gonna shut that school down. And, you know, I think a lot of these districts are doing it, it's a little bit easier just to say, we're just gonna blanket shut down all of elementary. You know, high school, the numbers warranted it. The middle school, the numbers warranted it. And those kids, I'm not gonna ever say it's easy, because it's not, but a little bit easier for them to go virtual. The little ones, if the numbers aren't there right now, and so what we're doing must be working. Now, if the numbers go up, if there's new numbers tonight that someone can show that a particular school is just, you know, breaking out, then we make a move. Maybe we go back through those schools and see if there's any more that we can do to protect our teachers. Because there's things working in one school that a certain principal has put in place that maybe another school isn't doing. You know, I've heard just today, that at one school we had dividers and at another school we don't. They're not using them because the kids can't see as good. So if that's going on out there, we need to take a look and make sure that all the mitigation procedures that were put in place are being done to protect our teachers. We all want to protect our teachers. We all want to protect our students, but we all want to make sure that we're giving the best education to our students. And if that's keeping the little ones in a little bit longer, you know, I'm all for it, but I'll be the first one to say, you know, we called an emergency meeting last week within 24 hours, right, Mr. Green? And
That's correct.
And with virtual, we can do things in real time if it's necessary, but let's bring the parents along with us. Let's show them what's going on, real numbers, real data, transparency. And when the numbers are there, the parents are going to be with us, because I've talked to a ton of them, and that's what they want to see. They just don't want to see these, you know, because this particular school has 20 cases, that the school up like Wisconsin might not have any, gets shut down. This doesn't make sense.
All right, anybody else, any board members, any additional comment before we move on the motion?
I just,
Oh, go ahead.
I just agree.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with John in that sense. And also, you know, in terms of potentially losing staff members, I think, you know, that's the case in point, and where, you know, Mr. Woodside would have the ability to shut down that building, you know, for whatever period, let it catch back up, let us get enough staff back in place, so that we're not, you know, exhausting our subs or putting it in a position where we don't have enough. But I also I generally feel like, you know, as a school district, you know, if we are not trying and striving to try every possible option, we all agree, I think across the board, between board members, administration, even teachers, that face-to-face is the best way for elementary. And I just feel like if we do not try every option and we don't exhaust every strategy that we come up with, such as this, to try and keep these littler ones in school, you know, then we're kind of bailing, and we're cutting ourselves short. And I wouldn't be happy with myself to be jumping the gun in that sense and flipping over to virtual when we didn't even try this option. And I'll be the first to say, if we try this option and we end up where Mr. Woodside has to cancel almost every building, I'm confident that this board will meet at that point and say, all right, look, we've done it, we tried. It's obviously not working right now. So that's why I would like to give this a shot. I think it's the most important thing, and I just support it wholeheartedly.
Mr. Middlestat, I think you were trying to jump in there.
I was just going to try to agree with what John said, is that, you know, what's working now seems to be working by building. If we have to shut them down based on case by case basis, and of course, if we've got it's just such an outbreak, we just shut the thing down. But at this point, again, it's the information we have is we're doing a pretty good job, we're doing the best job we can, and it seems to be working, but that's not to say that things could go haywire later on. So I just think we just need to give it a shot and see where we're at. And of course, after the Thanksgiving break, we can meet again and make adjustments if necessary. If suddenly the whole country, the whole county even gets worse, then it appears that we really need to do something, we'll do it. But I hate to go week by week, opening, closing, opening, and closing. I think some consistency, and I think parents would understand if you have got data to show that, hey, you know what, of all our elementary buildings, we can only keep one open. I guess that's data that's very straightforward and easy to understand. So, and I agree with the concerns we have, but I think so far we should try to continue as best we can. Like everybody said, we can shut it down building by building or all the whole district. That's the power. We've empowered the administration to run the district on a day-to-day basis, and I believe they'll do the best interest of staff and children.
So I agree. I agree with with John and with Steve and Lisa. So one more time, I'll throw it out there. Is there any more comments before we move on this motion?
Yes, there is. As I sit here listening to everybody, like I said, I absolutely get both sides. I get the teacher side, I get the parent side, I get the individual, all the individual issues. My phone has been blowing up from parents reaching out to me. And I'm going to be honest with you. Most of them are saying they want to pull their kids out of the face-to-face environment. And I need everybody here to reiterate to those parents right now that if this is a decision that you're moving forward to keep elementary kids face-to-face, that yes, the parents are asking me, can I pull my kid now into the virtual system? And that needs to be reiterated to them that yes, they can, but we also now need to understand that if the parents begin to move into that virtual system that has its own set of teachers at the elementary level, that you may also run into a situation in where we may not have the necessary teachers to pull into because we had an issue where we were short 2 virtual teachers. And as these class sizes begin to grow, you need to understand that we may have a shortage on that teacher side as well. So for these few moms that have reached out to me, yes, you absolutely can pull your children into the virtual environment, despite what the decision is made here tonight. I do want to let you know, I have had a lot of people. I know 5 families that have COVID positive cases and that the health department has not done the contact tracing in any way, shape, or form. So I do not believe these numbers are accurate, but I need you to keep that in mind as well. And I want to know, what is the criteria that you can't just say to Mr. Woodside, make a decision 1 day, 2 days. I mean, you guys, somebody should sit down and make a criteria for him, because I can foresee down the road finger pointing in regards to why one building was closed down and not another building. I mean, I think we need to maybe set up a small committee, if that's the road that we're going to go down, to set up some boundaries, some criteria to give them some operating parameters instead of just, I don't want anybody to say it was willy-nilly and done for one building in one way and another building for something else. Yes, it all makes perfect sense. There's so many different factors at play here, but I think there needs to be a set of parameters that need to be set up so that decisions are made in a quantitative environment, so that people kind of know what's going on with opening and closing and the inconsistencies that causes.
Can I circle in and ask a question based on what Ms. Hendershot said?
Sure.
It's not to Ms. Hendershot, but actually it's probably more towards Mr. Woodside. But from what I understand, we're allowing and we're trying to accommodate if people need or want to make a switch into virtual as best as we can. If we reach a point, like Ms. Hendershot says, we could, if we reach a point where, say, you know, the virtual teachers at the elementary level that we have set aside are, you know, at their capacity, at their maximum, how, I guess, what's the suggestion? How would we approach that? I don't necessarily want to say, you know, well, too late for you. You know, somebody beat you to it and now the class is full. Would we make a wait list until we can pull a teacher? Or how do you foresee us, if we made it to that point, how would we start dealing with that? Or would we just reach a point where we'd have to say it's closed, no changes at this point?
Yeah, we would reach a point where we'd have to be closed. Once we reach max class sizes, you know, because we were challenged to staff the virtual classes as it is. And so we would have to put once the class reaches its limit, we cannot take any additional students into that class. We do have, this week, we do have elementary requests to go virtual. So we're trying to accommodate all the ones that we can, but yeah, we're going to reach a point where we're not going to be able to do that. And we don't have the ability, we can try, but we're not going to have the ability to add additional teachers.
I also feel with there not being an agreement as to whether we should or shouldn't stay open, I think that we only need 4 board members to be called together. If there was a decision like that to be made, then 4 board members minimum should be reassembled to look at what data has come through and make that decision to close a building.
So I'm fine with, you know, Mr. Moses initially mentioned a committee, and now Ms. Hendershot, Ms. DeWitt. I'm fine with the superintendent assembling a committee or pulling a minimum of 4 board members back together if he wants to do a long-term closure. But that kind of defeats the purpose of Mr. Middlestat's motion of trying to give him this authority to do his job, actually, you know, to do what he needs to do to shut down a school if necessary. So I don't know how that resonates with everyone else, but and I know we're a very flexible group of people. As I mentioned last week, we all jumped on. John mentioned it tonight. 24 hours, you know, 7 of us jumped on a call. I don't know if Mr. Woodside wants to weigh in at this point of what his comfort level is with a committee or trying to reconvene the board, but you know, the motion is to give the superintendent the autonomy to make these decisions.
Yeah, I already have the authority to close school. If I feel it's not safe, I already have the authority. That could be for 1 day, it could be 5 days. Probably once we get into the 5+, I reconvene the board, you know, request that so we can address it because there must be a long-term issue. But the closing of schools that I've done to this point has not been due to student outbreak of COVID. It has been done because, you know, staffing. You know, you have teachers that are quarantined. You have teachers that have tested positive. And the biggest challenge is getting the classrooms covered, you know, under our current operation. I mean, we've used, you know, anybody in the district that is 60+ credits to help sub in the classes. We've had principals in the classrooms to cover so we can get through each day. But when I closed, it's due to the staffing, not the quarantining of students. So if I close to get in the future any of these elementaries, it is most likely due to the fact that we just don't have the staffing for the building. So therefore, we would close.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call the motion vote.
All right, well, that sounds like a reasonable request, Mr. Secretary. At this point, I believe everybody has spoken. Why don't you go ahead and call the roll for your motion, sir?
Ms. Brookmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
DeWitt,
No,
Ms. Ekaveni Hendershot,
No,
Mr. DeRue,
Yeah.
Mr. Middlestate, yes.
All right, motion carries. Before I do move on to the next topic, I see our auditor on the center of my screen here. I know he's pained by these, where he ended up on the agenda. There was a discussion that we probably need to have as a board. Somebody had already mentioned, I believe it was Miss Hendershot. We need to probably come to some kind of conclusion about our any teachers that wish to work from home in our secondary level or in the elementary if they're closed. So I don't know what the board's pleasure is on this topic. I certainly will entertain a motion if there's one out there.
I like to make a motion. Oop,
Oh. Go ahead,
Mr.
Ms. Henry.
Moses?
I'm sure my motion's gonna be the same as yours.
I'd like to make a motion to give the teachers the choice to pick between working from home or working in the building.
I second.
Mr. Rathbun, I see you with your hand up. Is there something you'd like to share?
Nothing other than to say that, we do need to be careful of, what MIOSHA's law is. So we just need to be cognizant of what that is, I think, as you consider this vote.
Specifically, sir?
Just, specifically, it speaks to that it isn't necessarily a choice. It's based on feasibility. And it is not simply the choice of the individual to report. It's based on feasibility.
All right. Well, there's definitely a motion on the floors. I'll throw in my 2 cents. Quite honestly, I'm okay with the teachers want to elect to work from home. I just worry that in September and at the end of last year, we had some accountability challenges, at least according to our parents and to the perception. So I certainly worry that emails and phone calls, may go unanswered for a little longer than necessary because they're not at home, or they're not at school. And the only other thing I want to make sure I have is that as much as, I want to keep teachers safe, I need to make sure that we don't incur substantial costs by providing significant numbers of hotspots and cell phones or anything, computers, screens, laptops. We don't have this type of technology available, nor do we have the dollars available to provide it to teachers who may need that type of technology to work from home. So I want to make sure that, if we're considering the option of giving the teachers a choice, we can't put ourselves in a position where we let folks go home and it costs us thousands of dollars per building to try to give them the necessary equipment when I already have the necessary equipment at the building.
Mr.
So
Green,
there is a
can
motion on the. Go
Can I
ahead, Ms.
modify
Singleton.
that a little bit? So what I'm attempting to convey is that I've had a lot of teachers say that they currently have technology in place at home that they can utilize. They're not asking to take school equipment. They're not asking for additional resources. I would say that each teacher would provide a plan of meeting the needs of their classroom based at home. So, maybe saying I have, a webcam, I have this, I have that. I personally know of a teacher who has, an Elmo that she uses from home. It's a digital Elmo. So if they have the resources available and can show a plan that they can provide the same service at home that they can at school, and they don't need any additional hotspots or technology or so forth that would incur an additional cost, I think that those teachers, especially based on the fact that the current order says if the job can be done from home, it needs to be done from home, especially for the next 3 weeks until December 9th. You may be able to revisit it at a later date, but these 3 weeks, they're asking everybody to stem the spread of this, who can work from home, to work from home. I am a virtual teacher. I teach from home. I have not asked the ISD for any additional resources. And so I can tell you it can be done. So we maybe have to tweak it a little bit and make sure that there's a plan in place. But I think that I know as many teachers who say they have the resources to work from home, and as many teachers who have said, no, I need the resources in my classroom and want to continue working in my classroom. So I think those are the 2 plans that we should set up.
Go ahead,
I
Lisa.
just have one concern, if we have teachers working at home, I understand the need at this point. If you know, like Janine said, if they have ample equipment and setup, some have even expressed that they think they have a better setup at home or connectivity. That may or may not be true. But my only concern on that level for right now is, you know, if a teacher's personal internet goes down, and they're at home, we don't have tech support for them. If they're in the building, they can jump to, you know, they can either get some help, or, you know, if their computer goes haywire, they can move to another room or something to that extent. So I guess that's my only concern. I don't know that I have an answer for it, because I understand the order is that they should probably be allowed to work at home at this point. So I don't know, you know, and it may not be something that even ever happens, you know, but if you look at like the windstorm we had the other day or something, you know, power outages, obviously we have to allow people to come in to the buildings regardless. But I guess that's my only concern is, you know, we're relying on everybody's individual connectivity to be okay. And even on our board meetings, we have some trouble with that. So I just worry about that.
I agree
Miss-
with Ms. Bergmeyer. However,
Miss-
I can say, just to give you a little bit of food for thought, I've been doing it for 9 months. I've not had a problem. One time that wasn't directly related to the ISD going down, and the ISD controls our district as well. So those were
And
the
I know
only
we have
issues
troubles with
that I've
those as
had.
well, even in the buildings.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. So, I mean, I can just tell you personally, I have not had that issue, and I am in a rural area that I can't even get Mr. Moses's AT&T out of my little neck of the woods. I have one provider that I am obliged to stick with because of where I live. And knock on wood, I don't want to be jinxing myself. I have not had those connection issues, Ms. Brookmeyer, that you've indicated. So, you know, yes, it happens. Can we plan for everything in the future? I don't know, we can't. I understand Mr. Rathbun's concerns, but I also understand that we're dealing with a pandemic. And I think that needs to take precedence.
Mr. Drew, any comments, sir? Mr. Middlestat?
Yes, I think I commented at the last meeting that we should have a plan in place to allow staff to do it from home. I think just doing a blanket motion without any criteria or any administrative guidelines to let us know what's acceptable and what's not, because everybody's idea of what's acceptable for a virtual setup may be different. So without a minimum standard of what kind of equipment or what's required, I just have a little bit of problem with that. I don't have a problem with the issue of allowing it. I just given a blanket motion that says they can do it when they want to without any requirements around that is the only troubling thing I have. I would think that we at least have the administration be able to approve each staff member provide a plan on how they're going to do it, and then have those plans approved before going ahead and doing it versus turning the switch. Friday, I'm going to principal on Friday. I'm going to do it from home without all the staff saying that, without knowing how they're going to do it. So there has to be some not restrictions, but some requirements around what, rather than a board, yes, you can.
Ms. Hendershot, I think it was your motion. Are you amicable to amending the motion to include some
I already did.
parameter?
The second time I chipped in, I said that the teacher has to provide a plan
Okay.
that is, you know, that they can meet the needs. And in that regard, I think every teacher should, you know, report to their building principal if they want to stay in the building, so we have an idea of how many are in the building, and if they want to go virtual from home. And then if the form says, you know, I think we should create something that says, yes, I want to work from home virtually, then you must go to the bottom half of the page and fill out your plan and submit that to your building principal for, you know, approval, or to the IT department to review to make sure that it seems appropriate, that they have the appropriate, you know, setup or whatever. whatever you decide, but I think there needs to be a plan presented to each building principal of what each teacher plans to do.
Mr. Rathbun, you talked a little bit about the virtual and your concerns. Do you feel like Ms. Hendershot's motion with some parameters and some kind of pre-approval is something that we could make happen? I'm not skip stepping you, Mr. Woodside. I just know that Mr. Rathbun had already spoke to it.
No, I mean, I'd like Mr. Woodside to weigh in a little bit. My only concern is there is specific language in the MIOSHA emergency rules. We have received a little bit of documentation from a couple different law firms, and we're trying to parse through that and make sure that we're following the law. I just wouldn't want the board to pass a motion this evening that might be in conflict with that law once we're able to parse it out and understand from a legal perspective what is required of the district.
Mr. Woodside, you want to jump in on any of that, or are you comfortable?
Yeah, no, I think that we intend on or planned on allowing staff to work from home just as long as it was possible. Meaning that if there is connectivity problems or concerns raised about that, then we would address it at that time. But our intentions are to allow the staff that are virtual is to work from home just as long as that works, that we're reaching our students and meeting all the criteria. They're able to do that, great. But if we run into some issues, then we'd have to address it, with the staff, with that staff member.
Ms. DeWitt, you started to say something?
Well, I also believe that every administrator must have some procedural things in place which allow them to make sure that office hours are being met, that a certain number of instruction, synchronous or asynchronous, is being conducted, and so on. And so I think teachers are very aware of their responsibilities. And I do know that a large number of districts have allowed their teachers to work from home just for safety reasons, but make the buildings available. As I had a number of teachers say, can we still work from school because we don't have the equipment at home? So I think we have to look at them as professionals, and that everyone is going to be doing what they should be doing, and administration should make sure that our virtual instruction is meeting standards at the same time.
All right, I think we've kind of talked this to death. So why don't we go ahead, Mr. Middlestat, and call the roll on the motion, please?
Can we reiterate what the motion is then?
Yeah, I'll paraphrase, but if I miss something, Ms. Hendershot, please jump in. The motion is to allow any of the teachers in the district now or in the future, as we're virtual, to have the choice of instructing from their school building or instructing from home. The additional caveat that was put in by Ms. Hendershot is that they have to provide a technology plan or a plan of their resources they have at home. And it sounds like the principal will be the person to approve those, or our tech department to approve those, or both.
Is there a time on it? Was this for 3 weeks or just open until it's changed, or?
Number 9.
I would say as long as or that teacher is in a virtual environment, that they have the ability to make that decision. If we're back face to face, then they go back face to face if that's what their original assignment was.
Okay, so you're just saying the option ongoing as long as they're virtual, right? Okay.
So, I mean,
I just wanted to
we're
make
not
sure.
talking about the other virtual teach. I mean, I would assume, we're looking at our secondary that just got forced back into their, that were face to face, that are now facing this new virtual environment.
All right, Mr. Middlestat, are you clear?
Yep. Okay, Ms. Bergmeyer,
Yes.
Moses,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
DeWitt,
Yes.
Megavani Hendershot,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Ms. Middlestate, yes.
All right, the motion carries. Moving on down our agenda. I believe that captures everything that we need to discuss in relation to opening and closing schools, virtual or not virtual, as well as our teachers working from home.
Do we have to
So-
change something for the special ed? Do we have to make a motion?
Well,
Yeah,
Mr.
to
Kuzmano
allow them to
certainly-
go hybrid.
Are you making that motion, Mr. Moses?
Yes, I'll make the motion to allow the special ed to use a hybrid model.
And that's the hybrid model that Mr.
For the
Kuzmano
CI
presented.
classrooms, right?
Yes, for the CI classroom and
Okay, and that's the hybrid model Mr. Kuzmano presented about an hour ago.
yes.
Is it possible to say hybrid for those programs as needed? Because if ECSE that started hybrid, if their numbers spike overnight, then there should be the ability to go hybrid if needed. Because they've got 15 kids in those classes and they're
Who's going to determine that? Mr.
Pardon?
Kuzma? Who do you want to determine that?
I
Mr.
would think
Kuzmano or-
that your special ed supervisor with the superintendent would determine that.
All right, Mike, are you amicable to amending your motion to include what Ms. DeWitt just stated about giving Mr. Kuzmano and Mr. Woodside the ability to move that into hybrid as they see fit? Or
Yes.
virtual?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I've got a motion. I think I understand the motion. I need a second.
I'll support it.
Ms. Hendershot supports. Any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none. Mr. Middlestat, please call the roll.
Brookmeyer. Oops.
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes,
Green,
Yes.
Dewitt,
Yes,
Betty Hendershot,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Ms. Middlestate, yes.
All right, very good. Motion carries. Now I believe I've captured everything that we need to cover in terms of those topics. So we will move on to the open forum. At this point, the public is invited to comment on items on the Board of Education agenda. Those who wish to participate in the open forum should have already filled out a brief request stating their name, address, and agenda, and the item they wish to address. Please limit your comments to the board chair and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please, when you begin your 3 minutes, please state your name and address. Tim, where should we start, sir? I'll let you run this part.
There was Crystal Ortega.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
All right, my name is Crystal Ortega and I live at 54581 Arrowwood in New Baltimore. For the most part, you guys actually answered most of what I would have said anyways. But I will address the board in this way in terms of the building by building with the elementary school is not a bad idea. I would assume we do have a backup plan in the unlikely event or likely event that we do need to shut everything down. As Mr. Woodside stated, if it were longer than 5 days, he'd kind of get everyone together to kind of make that decision. Second to that, obviously the high school having to shut down sooner than the 23rd. You guys did a great job at getting all that information out to the families. Middle school will be Monday. Last question, and it pertains to this and it doesn't, will there be any changes given the fact that we have decided to remain remote through January as it relates to food service? Do we know that as of yet or no?
Actually, that's a great question. I know there's been discussions. I know we provided food service back in the spring when we were virtual. Mr. Woodside, are you able to address that?
Yeah, we do still plan on providing, lunches to students during closure. Yeah, just
Okay.
get it done before.
Okay, sounds great. You guys are doing a great job, so thanks for that. And I would also ask the board to consider maybe at your next meeting, it may be too soon to tell, possibly doing that one extra week after the holiday break. I know that was discussed last week. At the emergency meeting, we determined it was too soon to tell. December 18th may be too soon to tell. So I know you guys probably don't want to talk, New Year's Eve, but just keep that in mind as you guys are watching the numbers and whatnot, okay? Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Mr. Sizemore.
Brian Powers.
Yeah, am I there?
I can hear you, Brian. Go ahead.
All right, so, here we go again. The way this was presented at the beginning of the meeting was, we're gonna reaffirm the current plan. If any of the public would like to comment on reaffirming the current plan, please speak up. Otherwise, we'd ask that you hold off your comments until after we reaffirm the plan. So you guys reaffirm the plan, and then you move right into ramrodding through all this other stuff without soliciting any public comment. Things like work from home. Many parents, myself included, had some serious concerns about this. That had nothing to do with reaffirming the plan. That's something totally separate that you moved right onto without soliciting any public comment whatsoever. I will say this, we had an election a couple weeks ago, and one of you lost your board seat specifically because the parents of this district are fed up with not being listened to. We don't ask that you do things that we agree with 100% of the time. That's not the goal. What we ask is that we have a seat at the table and have our voices heard before big decisions are made. And this is exactly the kind of stuff that resulted in one of you losing your board seat. So I will say this once again, if you want to join her in 2022 or 2024 and beyond, keep it up, because we're paying attention. We're damn sick and tired of this, and we're not putting up with it anymore.
Point of order. Point of order.
All right, moving on. Next, Mr. Sizemore.
Lockheed. Don't see Lockheed on there. Richard.
Did you say Richards? Is that who we're looking for?
He's unmuted.
Dennis Richards, 9980 Arnold Road, Ira, Michigan. Today, I'm asking the board to make the superintendent accountable on a new return to learn roadmap for the middle and high schools. I've lost all confidence in the existing plan. This plan did not work the first time around, and we cannot expect it to work any differently when students and staff are able to return. When working on the new plan, we should also be able to adjust the remote learning plan as well. I'm asking the board to set weekly meetings to receive updates on the new plan. We do not need 4 to 5 plans for the entire district for the board to choose from. We need one plan for each individual school, since each school is set up differently. If the board is going to be held accountable by the community and the school district on a plan, the board needs to be more involved in the planning. It is obvious that the central administration office needs help. The board and the central administration needs to establish a focus group for each school. And who better to lead this group but the principal of each school? The focus group can collaborate with the teachers, staff, transportation, and parents. Each school should have a representative from the central administration office that sits in on the focus group as well. This plan must include more social distancing in each school to prevent the number of students and staff that are quarantined. We need to keep students and staff safe. We need to look at all available real estate that Anchor Bay has and leverage this real estate. If this means setting up classroom environments in the gym, at the sportsplex that we already lease, the empty dorms at McDonald's, we need to do whatever it takes to make this plan work. When a plan is put together at the building level by the ones that live it day in and day out, it assures us that it will be a plan that has the highest chance of success with reasonable expectations, as they know best what can be accomplished at each level in their respective building. Anchor Bay's mission statement, empowering all students to succeed in an ever-changing world, could not be more relevant than today. Let us lead our students by example and come back from this better than before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Mr. Sizemore?
Amanda Stewart.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused as to, maybe you can answer one question. So the hybrid situation is for the CI classrooms only?
That is my understanding of the motion that we just passed.
Okay, so I have been on every single meeting and I have come forward with every single concern that the elementary, and I'll speak for elementary, secondary kids who have fallen off the bandwagon on this virtual, unable to process. My son is now 2 A's, 2 B's, and a C with virtual all F's and a D. I have brought it to this board several occasions, on every occasion, that we need a plan for these kids who are an IEP or in an ASD enrollment. But yeah, we're going to mention the CI kids, and no offense to those parents, but I'm fighting for these other kids. You can't tell me that within 6 weeks, he brings his grades up from all F's and a D to 2 A's, 2 B's, and a C, that face-to-face is not working for him. Virtual does not work for him. The order that I understood that the governor passed was due to closing down places that didn't allow for social distancing. That didn't mean, and no offense to the teachers, but that didn't mean teachers working from home. And what I had spoke to Mr. Woodside about last week was possibly if there are no kids in this building, the teachers are in the building because they're now socially distanced in their classroom. Why can't we somehow create a hybrid situation for these kids who just can't process the Schoology? If my teachers are working from home, how are they going to help Nolan one-on-one? They're not going to be able to. They've been working with us and they've been working one-on-one to fix the problems that we had in virtual. He brought those grades up and now we have no plan, and nothing has been discussed. It's now going on Thursday. I've given it time. I was called last Friday. Thank you, Mr. Woodside, for calling me, but it's now Thursday and no plan is in place. So how are you guys going to, what are you guys giving to me back? This is not like I just join a meeting every once in a while and throw my concerns out there. I've had the same legit concern from the beginning of the year. So I guess there's no plan in place. We're thinking of the safety of the teachers. The teachers are in their own classroom teaching virtual, but no one's thought, as the last gentleman just spoke about, empowering students so they can succeed. We're not empowering him because we're taking it all away after 6 weeks. We're planning for people to go on vacation and let's quarantine so people can go on vacation, but yet we're at 1 million+ COVID positive tests and everybody's thinking about going on vacation and having their holidays, surrounded by family and friends. Great, but that's not doing anything for my child. And that's the least of my concern, is so people can go travel. My concern now is my child, and no one's addressed that.
So I'll ask Mr. Woodside. I didn't have a chance to follow up with them about your conversation. I understand correctly. So your child started out virtual, as everyone did, and
Yep.
is now face-to-face, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and your concern is what's going to happen, obviously, if and when we go virtual in the elementary school, correct?
No, he's in secondary. So this has been a big concern because he's in 7th grade. And so now going back and working with the teachers and getting his grades back up, and he fails again, what happens? Because his teachers are at home and they're not there to help him with the one-on-one. And I can only be there to be one-on-one with him because I do work a full-time job. My husband got laid off during the pandemic, so I do work a full-time job, and now he's picking up full-time again. So what are we going to do? I need that help from the school because obviously it's working. And we did not come up with any, and I'm not just speaking for my own son, I'm speaking from several parents who have commented on the, just on me speaking out in these meetings. I'm commenting for those parents who are out there going, oh my gosh, my kid can't do virtual. He's going to fail, or she's going to fail. We know that those kids are out there, they're on IEPs. Has anybody pulled the IEPs and saying, these are the ones who really need the resources? We need to come up with a plan. And this is why I asked 2 weeks ago, do we have a backup plan? No one has a backup plan, ever. And that's a huge concern of mine. We've known about this pandemic for 9 months and no one's come up with a backup plan for anything. We're just going week to week and, we'll shut down this building and we'll do this if this comes up, but we already know there's 1 million plus COVID positive cases out there and there are no backup plans. We knew that this surge was going to happen, no backup plans. Going into September, we knew that there were going to be issues with the virus going up, no backup plan. And I've waited and I have waited for this committee to, even if it's 4 special education teachers saying, what are we going to do? Nobody has stepped up to the plate. I'd be a part of the committee if I had to come after work. I would be a part of it to help out. But no one's thinking about that. They're thinking about the teachers and exposure. The kids aren't in school anymore, so there's really not that much exposure for the teachers at that point.
So I'm going to have to defer to one of 3 people, Mr. McDonald, Mr. Woodside, or Mr. Kuzmano. I can't speak.
Mr. Kuzmano.
I think Frank is still on, so.
Yeah,
sure.
He can address.
Sure.
I got a question for the Chairman. When we did the motion, I know we talked about CI, but I don't think the motion specifically said CI only. I don't remember that.
We added ECI.
Discussion around CI, but are we only going to do CI or are we going to help other kids? I thought it was.
No, guys, can I talk? So the CI part of it going hybrid is because they want to go hybrid, even if we are full face-to-face, because they can't keep their teachers, because those kids spread germs a lot faster than everybody else and their teachers keep getting quarantined. It had nothing to do with the IEP kids, because those kids are able to go face-to-face full time. They just need the special help because they don't have the issues with the toileting and the other things that really cause the spread. That's why the hybrid model was to give them the authority to go now. It had nothing to do with the IEP, because the IEP people don't have the functional issues. All right. If I'm correct, back, and I'm just going off memory, which is terrible, but if I'm correct, that when we did go virtual, it ended up being hybrid for the IEP kids for that exact reason. And I believe that's what we would return to. It worked for us. I can't say that it was great, but like my daughter goes and meets with her IEP teacher once a week, right? Because she's virtual. But that being said, and maybe Miss Stewart, I don't know if she wants to bring this up, but did the kids go hybrid for a while we were virtual? Because I believe that's what we would go back to, as long as that was functioning and working.
The last week, he was allowed to go up to the school twice to get, first of all, I was told that he'd get help from his caseload teachers so that, to see where he was missing it, but it ended up only being technology support and, okay, you go in this direction, then you're going to turn right and then you're going to turn left. He brought the papers home. Technology support is not what he needed. What he needed to know was what specifically is due. You put this down, you say you don't have to turn it in, but then this one doesn't say anything, but I have to turn it in, but then I missed that assignment and I don't understand, because he has a processing error. I don't really understand your directions, because he is a word for word kid. He is not let's beat around the bush kind of kid. So he was able to go in once, and then they said he could come in one more day, and then we went back face to face that following Tuesday.
So I was under the impression that what was supposed to happen and may have had that stay long, and Mr. Kuzmano, maybe you can follow me up, tell me I'm wrong, whatever. But we were supposed to set up a hybrid model for those IEP kids where they were going to have smaller class sizes with their special ed teacher face-to-face was what we were trying to do. I believe that's what would have happened had we went virtual longer, but we went back face-to-face. I just wanted to make the reference on why the CSI was mentioned. It's because they want to go hybrid, or they want the option to be able to move their kids hybrid, even if we are still face to face.
And I agree with the CI and why they're hybrid. That makes complete sense to me. I have a friend who has a child CI. I get it completely. That makes total sense, and I'm not arguing that fact. But it's the fact that in every meeting, that's what comes up, and I've addressed this every meeting, and that there has been no plan attempted or made, or even spoke about, like, we have to get a committee together to figure out how we could work this out. Even if it's with the caseload teachers, whatever it may be, no one has mentioned it until I bring it up in the meeting, and then it's like, okay, we'll get a call and we're going to work on this, and then there's nothing being worked on. We're now going into Thursday before we go virtual, and there's no plan in place. How would this work with transportation? What would we do? How many hours a day? Even if it's 3 hours a day, they're getting direction. Nothing.
So I guess we put it back to Mr. Cosmato. Is there a plan for
Sure.
these IEPs if we go virtual?
So, yes, what I can say is that what happened in September, while we were mostly virtual and our self-contained programs were in this hybrid model, we attempted to do what we at the time called tech assessments, where this was per parent transportation. We allowed students to come up to buildings where staff members could support them, make sure they had access to Schoology and all the online formats. And of course, if students were in person, there was an opportunity to provide some support as needed. And this started to pick up, and we started having more opportunities to meet student needs in that way. And then of course, we went back to face-to-face. As far as contingencies and plans now for IEP students, other than the virtual supports, which we talked about earlier, of classroom teachers being able to set up and schedule individualized Zoom sessions or small Zoom sessions, if we were to set up some contingencies which allowed for IEP students to receive in-person supports, which is what I've heard parents kind of request and bring up at these meetings, those propositions are all based upon teacher support physically on site in buildings. So that kind of raises the broader question based upon the governor's decree, based upon whether or not staff members can be in these buildings. That is all kind of predicated on what needs to be discussed in terms of how can we offer physical support to IEP students on site.
So
Well,
what I need to do is I need to move us along. We're in an open forum, and suddenly, and I'm very concerned about your concerns, Ms. Stewart. But I've got to move on. I've got 200 people on a call here. Mr. Cusmano, can you get back to this parent tomorrow?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I will reach out to you tomorrow, because obviously I'm not going to give my number over this, but I will reach out to you tomorrow so that we can figure something out, that, someone's personally touching base with him at least twice a week.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
No
Thank you. Mr. Sizemore, next.
Kyle Kappa.
Yep. Hi, everyone. 5322 Church Road, Casco, Michigan. First of all, I'd like to share that I agree with Mr. Powers' concerns over the timing of the public comment compared with the decision making of the board. Equally frustrated with that. I would like to set some things before you made a decision about whether or not teachers will be working from home in a virtual setting. So I'll jump right into that. Unfortunately, based on experience that we've had with virtual in the past, we know that it's a problem with teachers teaching from home. And I say unfortunate because these are working adults and professionals that we shouldn't have to have these concerns with. But we had teachers teaching from their pajamas. We had teachers just not showing up for Zoom meetings. We had teachers with constant technology issues. And if virtual schooling isn't frustrating enough, that obviously just compounds the frustration tenfold. So I'd like you to consider putting some further constraints on teachers who choose to teach from home, and not because we need to be babysitters, but because unfortunately, there's situations that have arisen already, and that, that this is based on real experience. So I would like to consider, requiring 100% synchronous teaching. So teachers are in front of a camera with their students 100% of the time, the entire time, just like they would be in the classroom. I think this is going to avoid some of the issues that we had in the fall. Obviously you already made the decision to allow them to teach from home, which I agree would be great had we not already had this issue that we did in the past. So I'd like to encourage you to put some other things in place to prevent that from happening again. Because like I said, it's going to be frustrating enough doing what we're doing now. So you need to help us out and put us in a better situation. We're not going to have teachers, having technology issues, or again, teaching from their pajamas, or just not showing up. That's all I got to say.
Well, I appreciate your feedback. Thank you, sir. Mr. Sizemore?
Heather H.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Heather Hooten, and I am at 31549 Riverbend in Chesterfield. I would like to thank the board for continuing the face-to-face instruction for the elementary students. I was concerned over the course of a couple of parent-teacher conferences last week when teachers had expressed their concerns over students forgetting to do the most minor things, such as writing sentences, just small things that, being out since March, there was a big impact on that. And that's not even talking about the different test scores that have dropped a little bit. So I want to thank you for hearing the parents and for keeping our young kids face-to-face for as long as possible. I would like to ask, last week during the special board meeting, there was a parent who brought up, and might not have been a parent, but the possibility of a different look for exams for the secondary students. This constant back and forth between face-to-face and virtual isn't easy. I have kids at high school and middle school level, and they each adjust differently, but it's hard to really know what these teachers want and expect when you're going from virtual to face-to-face, back to virtual. The level of, and while our teachers have done a good job of adapting to virtual, and I would applaud them all on the significant improvement over the spring, and I realized that was a rush situation, but I just feel like there does need to be some discussion as to how we're going to be handling exams, because those are going to be coming up. And right now, tests are horribly stressful, tests alone, and let alone exams, where you just don't have the time and the face-to-face to really go over questions and topics with your teachers. But thank you again for your time tonight, and thank you again for hearing the parents and for keeping our kids, our younger ones, face-to-face.
Thank you for the feedback. We're definitely not done with the exam discussion. I know it was brought up by a couple of board members last week. I felt like our agenda was pretty full tonight, so I didn't put it specifically on to be discussed, but it will be likely discussed in December. Mr. Sizemore?
That's it.
All right, let me see if I can find my agenda here on one of these devices. All right, so that concludes the public forum. It looks like we're moving on to Greater Achievement, which is a JROTC presentation, which are we having tonight or virtually, or are we not able to have that?
As far as I know, it was. I just unmuted Joshua Mayer.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
I can, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Good evening, I am Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Mayer, the Corps Commander, and I will be providing you our update tonight.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our new SASE, Senior Aerospace Science Instructor, Major Jeffrey Herman. I know he's in the audience tonight. Major Herman comes from Wayne High School, Air Force Junior ROTC from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He has a wealth of experience and has taught Air Force JROTC for the past 17 years. He's also taught at Highland Park High School in Highland Park, Michigan. He spent 20 years in the Air Force as a B-52 navigator and maintenance officer, and he also has his private pilot's license and brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in both aviation and JROTC. We are glad and lucky to have him in our team, and I really have to say he has done a great job of bonding with the cadets so far in a very short amount of time. As the school year began, the cadet leadership worked hard to figure out how to best provide our junior cadets with the most impactful experience while meeting all social distancing protocols. We've been working tirelessly to develop a drill team and have had practices once we were allowed, but unfortunately we'll have to suspend activities until current events allow us to resume operations. I know that with all of the virtual back and forth, it's been difficult, but right now we're trying to do more administrative actions. And then once we get back to school, hopefully the unit can get back to more hands-on stuff and we can get a jump start on things. As you may know, Air Force Junior ROTC is more than just a classroom experience. We offer many extracurricular activities which enhance a cadet's experience in the program, from competition drill or marching to model rocketry and community service opportunities. We offer a range of opportunities that afford cadets to lead, follow, and enhance their team building skills. We also have many staff positions within our cadet organization that will allow for additional leadership and teamwork opportunities. In this effort, we have been working to diligently assign cadets to leadership roles and positions within our organization. Further, we have been providing positional training to get staff cadets working toward meeting our unit goals, which we established at the beginning of the year. Hopefully, that gives you better insight as to the inner workings of the program and how it can be impactful both to the cadets in management, education, and to the broader community. Additionally, we are still trying to impact the community directly, despite the challenges to our community service projects. We are doing indirect ones, such as the Lions Got Your Backpack Homeless Project, which is a service where we collect various types of goods for care packages for the homeless. We will also be collecting toys for the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve Toys for Tots program, all while observing social distancing and complying with the current Michigan Department of Health and Human Services orders. Our cadets are motivated and continue to support our local communities in one way or another, despite the restraints placed on us by this virus. In recent years, the Air Force established the JROTC Flight Academy. This is a very expensive and fantastic opportunity that is completely paid for by the federal government. The Flight Academy is a summer flight school for qualified JROTC cadets to earn their private pilot's license. It is a $23,000 scholarship that starts motivating cadets in aviation careers. And I know that there is a military pilot shortage, which many people believe is the main reason for this program, but there are great civilian pilot shortages as well. So many people who may not be interested in the military would still benefit from that program in a civilian career. Finally, we are hosting a virtual fundraising event through SnapRaise. We hope to be able to continue to raise funds for our program and will enable us to continue to offer first-rate opportunities to our cadets and families. As always, all funds go back to our cadets in one way or another, be it through scholarships or snacks on the field trips. Even in these restricted times, additional funding is needed to support various functions of our program, from uniform cleaning costs, alterations, and senior scholarships, which we are proud to say we support year to year. If anyone is interested in donating to our program via SnapRaise, the link will be posted to our Facebook page, Anchor Bay High School Air Force JROTC. So please check it out, like us, and share our page to your network. We could really use the support. And please remember, we are a citizenship program designed to build responsible young adults that understand the meaning of supporting their communities through hard work and leadership. By federal law, we are not a recruiting tool for military or a military preparatory class, but a citizenship program. Many people believe all or most of our students want to join the military, but that could not be farther from the truth. Typically, only 1 to 3 of our cadets out of up to 100 join the military in any given year. Please help us spread the message that we are a citizenship program and not a military preparatory class. If anyone knows of any students that could benefit from our program, please have them contact the high school counselors, Major Herman or Senior Master Sergeant Quintana. We are always ready to welcome new students at any time. And that concludes our update for tonight. I appreciate the time and thank you for listening.
Well, we certainly appreciate the update. We've missed you guys around for the updates throughout the beginning part of this year. Do any of the board members have any questions about the JROTC update? All right, hearing none. Thank you, sir. We'll move on down the agenda to general business. Today we have with us.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to amend the agenda to add an item, please.
All right, sir.
I'd like to add an item under general business after the school resource officer, item G, board organization.
Board organization? Specifically?
Or the organization of the board.
All right. Is there a second for that?
Second.
All right. Motion by Mr. Middlestat, supported by Ms. DeWitt. Any comments before we move on the motion? Hearing none. Mr. Middlestat, please call the roll.
Bergmeyer.
No.
Mr. Moses,
No.
Mr. Green,
No.
Mr. Witt,
Yes.
Ms. Akaveti Shendershot,
Yes.
Mr. Drew,
Sure.
Mr. Middlestat, yes.
Motion carries. Item G has been added to as requested. Okay, back up to item A under general business, the 1920 audit presentation. Today we have with us Kim Lindsay, and he will take over from here to present the results of our audit.
Good evening, board. Tough time, tough decisions that you guys have to go through. Appreciate your position. I'm here to present the results of the audit for the 1920 school year, and I'll keep this brief so you can keep your meeting moving along. I believe you've all had a chance to get the reports, the financial information, the management letter that came along with the reports as well, along with the single audit report, which is for your federal funds, part of the main audit. So if you'd like to advance the slide, Tim. First of all, I just want to take a quick second to thank the members of the finance department, led by Todd, but Robin Randazzo, Tracy Grix, Jessica Hiller, and Renee Keller for putting the audit preparations together, the financial information for the district, and for doing a really good job of doing that. This was a challenging year for audits as well, as the audits took place from afar. So everything was done virtually. So a lot of electronic transmission of information back and forth, phone calls, Zoom meetings, just a different kind of situation. Just like learning in person is better, auditing in person is better as well. So the results of the audit, most importantly, what was the auditor's opinion on the financial statements? And I'm happy to report that the district did receive an unmodified, or what we used to call a clean audit opinion. The report doesn't contain any findings or reportable conditions that rise to a level that need to be reported in either the single audit or the financial audit themselves. In your management letter, there is a comment in there with some recommendations about some additional procedures, monitoring and controls as it relates to the financial records and activities of the aquatic center. So that's inside of that management letter. We did audit the nutrition programs this year for your single audit, and I'm happy to report there were no findings there as well. As you know, your nutrition program has been running full steam since COVID hit. They've been feeding everybody. All the rules changed as far as eligibility and such. So your nutrition team did a great job and continued to follow all the guidance and rules that are required for that program. Also new this year, and I think I talked about it last year briefly, There was a new accounting standard that came into play, and the finance department put that into place regarding student activities. So your accounts that we used to call them student accounts, they were in the trust and agency area, now are part of the special revenue funds of the district. And those, if you remember, board, as you adopt budgets, you've been adopting a budget for this new fund starting a year ago, June. You started adopting that budget. Next slide, Tim. Just pointing out a few items on the next 2 pages on the district's overall, the government-wide financial statement. So the very first 2 financial reports in your bound audit packet are the district as a whole on the full accrual method of accounting. Then after that comes the fund level statements, which are the ones you're used to dealing with, where you adopt budgets, see your monthly reports and such. Generally, this reporting is only done at year end, and it's a result of accounting standard that came about 15 years ago. But a few items on those 2 first financial statements can be alarming. If you look at the statement and you say, what are these huge numbers? Why do I see a negative number on this first page? 2 accounting pronouncements that have been adopted over the last 5 to 6 years, one related to accounting for pensions, and the second one relating to retiree health care. Those 2 numbers there that you see, the net pension liability of $124 million and the OPEB liability of $27 million, is Anchor Bay's proportionate share of the state retirement plan for all employees of the district. So the MIPSERS plan. So those numbers are sitting as liabilities. We have no assets that go with those. That's why when you look at the front, that very first financial statements, you'll see a negative $138 million net asset deficit at the bottom of that page. It's not a general fund deficit, so we don't have to worry about any kind of deficit elimination plan, but these numbers are huge, and they're actually growing. As you see, the pension liability went up $14 million in a year. The OPEB liability is actually decreasing slightly because of that plan is basically closed to new participants, and you're paying in on that. The pension liability continues to grow as we have less people paying in, and quite frankly, the investment return that is proposed in the plan itself isn't actually occurring. They've been reducing that expectation over the years, but still not to reality. Next slide, Tim. And then also talking on the government-wide level, so if we look at overall macro revenues and expenses on an accrual method, so expenses in this area would include things like depreciation, which you would normally not see in your fund level statements. Total revenues of about $76 million, expenses of about $85.5 million. You'll see that's a net increase to the deficit of about $9.2 million on that government-wide statement. And once again, that's primarily attributable to the increase in the net pension liability in this last year. Next slide. All right, next couple of slides talking about fund level information. You'll see the way this is presented. You'll see the general fund, which you're familiar with, our normal, where we're doing all of our regular operating of the district, instructing children. Then we have the 2019 capital projects fund. So voter approved bonds for construction projects around the district. And then next to that is the 2016 school bond loan fund, debt fund. So we'll talk about that on the next slide a little more. But those 3 funds, because of their size, the sheer volume of the dollars in there, are considered major funds. So they are presented on their own. And then the far column is the non-major funds, consists of funds like the food service fund. There are 7 debt funds in there. The international student program is in there, and a couple of older capital projects funds that are basically fully expended. So just a couple of numbers on here. The general fund at the end of the school year, about $11.7 million of assets. Most of that is money in the bank or amounts owed to us from mainly the state of Michigan for state aid payments in the months of July and August that actually accrue back to the June school year. In the liability section, about $9.9 million there. The majority of the liabilities are related to accrued wages for our teaching staff, all their benefits, because they continue to be paid over the summer for wages earned as of June 30th. So there are 3 or 4 payrolls that happen after the year end that still are accrued back. The number I'd like to point out, and you're probably definitely aware of it, is the fund balance in the general fund at the end of the year was down to about $1.8 million. That's just under 3% of a year's worth of expenditures. So that number gets you in the I'm getting noticed by the state of Michigan level. And I'm sure Todd will get communication when the audit report is filed, just asking about budgetary plans and what we're thinking about what's going to happen for fiscal year 22. Also, the capital projects fund, you'll see we still have about just over $4 million of those bond funds still to be spent on capital projects. That'll probably happen over the next couple of years. And those funds are required to be audited at another level of scrutiny because of some state mandates, state law, really to protect taxpayers for those bonded, voted dollars for construction. And I'm happy to say, you'll see in the financial statement themselves, there's a footnote that talks about the fact that you complied with all those laws and the language that was in the ballot that was passed by your voters. Next slide. Looking at revenues and expenditures, general fund, just under $59 million of revenue this last year. Expenditures were just under $62 million. So you see we chunked away about $3 million of your fund equity. We're going to talk about one of the items that affected that on a slide coming up, leaving that ending fund balance of about $1.8 million. You spent down about $6.4 million of the capital projects in this last year. And then the school bond loan fund debt there, you'll see ins and outs of about $27 million as we provided some bond refunding money in there to pay some of that down. And then there's draws against that. So I actually think that's just the way we allocate. Draws come in and then we pass it out to the other debt funds. It's just the way it's presented. Next slide, please. One slide just talking about other items, larger dollar items that are in the report. As far as debt of the district, we have bonded debt. So these will be voter approved bonds of just over $133 million. You've gone through several bond projects over the last decade and a half as you've built buildings and really equipped your facilities. You were paid $34 million of that in the current fiscal year. And then the Michigan School Bond Loan Fund, and I think I've talked to you about this before, that's the safety net that's kind of out there. As districts are growing rapidly and they've done building projects, there are oftentimes, statutorily, there's only so much millage you can levy for debt. And the state steps in with the School Bond Loan Fund to help districts breach the difference between the amount you were able to levy for taxes and the actual principal and interest that was due on the bonds that year. There'll come a point where your property tax values will rise enough and your debt payments will go down enough that you'll begin paying those School Bond Loan Fund proceeds back. But in the current year, you drew, as we showed on the previous slide, about $27 million to make those principal and interest payments from the School Bond Loan Fund. Next slide, please. Just 2 slides now talking about some really big items that occurred after your fiscal year ended, and then a slide that talks about some items in the current year that should be of interest to the board. So as you sat there as a board and were amending your budget in June for the last time for last fiscal year, there were all kinds of really dire information coming out from Lansing as far as the shape of the school aid fund. Numbers as much as $650 to $1,300 a student, potential pullbacks and things like that. When the emergency consensus revenue estimating conference took place in the beginning of August, the emergency one, those numbers changed dramatically as the federal dollars that were pumped into our economy for people for unemployment benefits and such were getting spent. So the Michigan economy actually didn't go the way was predicted when the revenue estimating conference that took place in May during the middle of the opening surge of the pandemic hit. So So $175 was taken from you, and it wasn't taken from you until August. You had no idea what the number was going to be until about the 10th of the month in August. So that was $1 million hit. So when you look at your revenues overall, $1 million went bye-bye in the month of August, and cash flow went with it. It was replaced by $362 of per pupil funding of Corona Relief Funds, so CRF funds. Those dollars were appropriated in two steps. Early in July, actually July 1st, there was an Emergency Appropriation Act, and $12 and some odd cents per student was allocated to districts. And then in August, as you were taking your $175 hit, the legislature gave you what they said was a 2-for-1. So you received $350 worth of funding per pupil, but it was restricted federal dollars. I've been doing this for 37 years. I've never seen a single dollar come through a state aid appropriation act. It's always something outside, it's granted by another agency or whatever. So very unusual. And the problem, those are restricted dollars. Specific uses, and they have to be spent between now and the 30th of December. So we're on a short timetable there. I know Todd's been working on that along with the team in the finance department. So unrestricted dollars that were taken away were replaced by restricted dollars that have a very definite short timeline. Also, in the original CARES Act funding that came along to the state of Michigan, there were ESSER funds allocated through the Department of Education. I believe the actual allocation numbers were known at about the beginning of May. We didn't apply, the district didn't apply for those funds until after year end, and you'll be spending those in the current year. And you have until September 30th, the state's fiscal year in the current year, to spend that another $327,000. Next slide, please. And then lastly, in the state aid budget that you're currently operating under, so in fiscal year 21, there was in the same line item or same state aid code that you took the $175 per pupil reduction. In the current year, there's a $65 per pupil increase or additional funds. That's about $380,000 to the district. It didn't get added to the foundation allowance. That remained unchanged. So you've got another year of no change in the foundation allowance, but at least it didn't go down. So 8111 is the foundation allowance for the current year. And that $65 is going to be allocated and sent out to districts based on a formula where they use 50% of last year's audited student counts and 50% of this year's audited student counts to make that distribution. As opposed to the last bullet point there, where we talk about in the State Aid Act, there was also now a change as far as how students are counted just for fiscal year 21. So the state realized that with this environment of going virtual and hybrid and back and forth, that districts were probably going to lose students. There were probably going to be more losers than winners in that situation. I know in my area, there was a lot of homeschooling, and students have moved from the public school to the homeschool, may come back once full in-person learning is going full blast. So they built some money into the state aid budget for the current year for that situation where districts could be losing students. So normally we count, you had a count about a month ago, and that accounts for 90% of the value of the student count for the year that you're paid your state aid per pupil allowance on. And then the count that took place back in February of this year is the other 10%. For this year only, they're using a blend where they're going to allow you to use for their student counts 75% of last year's audited student counts and only 25% of this year. So if you're in a losing situation, it buffers the loss. If you're in a gaining situation, you don't get the full benefit. But so they did that to try and help districts out that are losing students. And then lastly, the bullet point in the middle, I've been putting this in my slides just as a cautionary, putting up a flashing yellow sign. When they do these consensus revenue estimating conferences, they project out a couple of years. And of course, these numbers can change as the economy either goes up or down, student counts go up or down. But for currently, for the fiscal year, June of 22, so that's a year from now, as far as your budgeting process goes, the state aid fund is still projected to be okay, be actually in the black to the tune of about $185 million. The problem is that they're also at the same point projecting the state's general fund to be in a $1.1 billion deficit situation. So according to state law, they can't adopt a deficit budget there. So, and they won't. So they'll be looking for the dollars. Who knows where those will come from? But just as you look, not this year, but a year out, just kind of some caution as to where we may end up as far as our funding for schools. Once again, I'd like to thank the staff there at the district. Congratulate them for getting through another audit. It's a big process to go through. And I would take any questions you may have, board.
All right, Mr. Lindsay, I certainly appreciate the lengthy presentation as well as the information that was provided to all the board members in the packet. I'll open it up to the board. Any questions of Mr. Lindsay at this point?
I would ask one question. You know, typically when we have the audit report, we do have, whether it's the auditor or the assistant superintendent for business, projection for what our budget will look like next year. I know the slide on the screen kind of indicates the difficulty we're going to have next year, but generally we've always presented at least an initial budget for where we stand next year. So where do we stand next year?
I'll let Todd answer that.
Yeah, I'll be happy to speak to that, Mr. Middlestat. So as the board's aware, we adopted a budget that has essentially a flat budget, meaning that we will not necessarily be adding to our fund balance. It'll be a zero, you know, in terms of the bottom line, meaning that our expenses are going to match what we're projecting right now for revenues. And that comes, as you'll recall, Mr. Middlestat, with a $1.58 million cut that we made to the budget at the start of this fiscal year. So in terms of where we would project things to be next year, we will likely project that we'll have about the same fund balance, about $1.8 million at the end of this year going into 21-22. And, you know, that will depend. The percentage might change a little bit because we're projecting also a decrease in our expenditures and revenues. So it may change a little bit, but still would expect it to end around 3%, maybe a little bit more than 3%, 3.1%, something like that. But that's where we would expect to end this year and start the 2021 or 21-22 school year.
So if you could go backwards on your slides, I'm looking for what our expenses were over revenue in the audit.
Right there, about just under $3 million.
Okay, so here's my concern is that we're just going to cut and break even at the end of this year, which will end up with $1.85 million. This year, or last year, we spent $3 million more in expenditures than revenues. So that's what you call a structural deficit due to the budget. It's not a one-time we spent an extra $3 million on this. That's intrinsic to the budget that our burn rate is greater than our revenue rate. So my concern is we end up with 1.85 million at the end of this year, but our general burn rate has been around $3 million, considering the revenues, and we'll have reduction in enrollment certainly as we go, but also the structural cost of salaries and benefits and all the other expenses. So I have not seen a plan that addresses that. We're going to have $1.8 million into this year, but we're potentially going to spend $3 million. So what it tells me is that we need to cut $3 million next year if we're going to balance at the end of that year. So I think there's a lot of variables going into these things, but when you look at these projections, you you have to look at least a year ahead to make your plans, because if everybody knows is that the cuts you make today are worth double the following year. The longer you wait to make difficult decisions and cuts, the more you have to cut. So my concern is we're seem to be, and we're not meeting with any emergency tack on our current budget that we're being, and it took some pressure just to balance to break even this year. But certainly it seems we're satisfied for breaking even this year when I really need to be more in tune, knowing that the following year we have a potential of spending $3 million. Just based on my experience doing these things, we're not presenting that to the public that there's a major issue going to occur next year as if we're spending the same kind of amount of money in salaries and increases next year as we did this year. We'll spend $3 million and I only have $2 million in the bank. So that's my point on the budget.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, Steve, to that. Certainly, we've talked at the board meeting that we do need to reduce expenditures. We've talked about right sizing the staffing at the district, and in order to meet the loss of students that we currently have. In addition to that, one of the good news pieces out of this is for the current year, we are also receiving the supplemental millage for the first time. So that produces about $2.4 million for the district. So that's going to help us a lot in the current year and obviously going forward for the next 10 years. So, but you're exactly right. I don't want to minimize what you're saying, sir. You are right. We do need to pay close attention and be very vigilant about our bottom line and about the economics of the district.
And thanks for reminding me, just consider this, is that we've got a $1.8 million balance, and without that $2.4 million enhancement millage, we'd be in the hole of 600,000. So the one major reason we're in the black $1.8 million is because we got that $2.4 million in enhancement.
Yep, I agree.
I just want to quickly add, I know the board finance committee, we have discussed that, and from that, that's how we came to the conclusion on the buyout, and there's other ideas that I know the finance committee has discussed, and we're vetting through those. Mr. Green, Mr. DeRue, and Mr. Witt are part of the finance committee. And that was also the same group where we worked together to reduce the budget by a little over 1.5 million going into this school year. So I agree with you, Steve, and through finance, we are addressing.
All right, any additional questions or concerns of Mr. Lindsay, of Superintendent Woodside, of Mr. Rathbun? Any other board members with anything before we move on? All right, hearing none, I don't believe we have a motion on this unless it's a motion to receive and file. We'll move on down the agenda here. Let me get it back up here on my device. Item B, the bills payable. Included in your packet is the bills payable for the month of October 2020. I will solicit a motion to accept the bills payable as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll support.
All right, motion by Mr. Moses, supported by Ms. Hendershot. Any further discussion on the bills payable for October? Hearing none, Mr. Middlestat, if you would call the vote, sir.
Ms. Brookmeyer,
Yes.
Moses,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Witt,
Yes.
Aggravating Hendershot,
Yes.
DeRue,
Yes.
Mr. Middlestate.
All right, motion carries. Moving on to item C on the agenda, summer tax resolution. Each year, the board considers an ongoing resolution requesting that each city and/or township collect the summer tax levy. This will continue from year to year until specifically revoked by the board. The business office is recommending approval of the attached resolution, which is in your board packet, which provides for collection of 50% of the operating millage, 9 mills, and 1/2 of the debt retirement millage, 5 mills, for fiscal year 20 and 21 to be collected in the summer of 2021. I will entertain a motion to approve the attached summer collection resolution.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Was that Mr. Drew on the second?
Yeah.
All right, motion by Mr. Moses, seconded by Mr. Drew. Mr. Secretary?
Sparkmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Witt,
Yes.
Benny Hendershot,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Ms. Middlestat, yes.
All right, motion carries.
Mr.
Moving
Green,
on. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I did want to point out that there is actually a motion in your packet to accept the 2019-20 audit.
All right, so I will solicit a motion to accept the 2019-2020 as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Moses, supported by Mr. Drew. Mr. Secretary?
Sparkmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Moses,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Mr. Witt,
Yes.
Second Benny Hendershot,
Yes.
Mr. Guru,
Yes.
Mr. Middlestat, yes.
All right, thank you for that, Todd. Motion carries. Returning back to the agenda. Item D, first reading of policy number 1002, meetings of the Board of Education, page 5. Who actually has this item, Mr. Superintendent? Is this Ms.
do.
Gonzalez?
I do. Good evening, Board. Before you, you have the first reading of a change to that policy number 1002 to help maintain compliance with recent changes to the Open Meetings Act. If anybody has any questions or if you could review the language, if there's any suggestions, any changes you would like made for me to make before the second reading, which we'll do next month.
What was the change?
What was the change?
Yes.
The change reflects the ability for all board members to participate in remote meetings effective through this next calendar year, and then effective January of 2022, it would revert back to just members of the board who are in the military that could participate remotely.
Is there any other questions of Ms. Gonzalez? All right, hearing none, I don't believe a motion is needed on that. That's just the first reading. Continuing on to item E, personnel. I assume that'll be you, Ms. Gonzalez, as well.
Thank you. I have before you a request from a teacher, Antoinette Genovese. She's one of our high school CTE teachers. She is requesting a personal leave, which is an unpaid leave, beginning December 14th through the end of the school year.
All right, do I have a motion to approve this request?
I'll move.
All right, how about a second?
I'll support.
All right, motion by DeWitt, supported by Hendershot. Any further discussion about this leave request? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, Mr. Middlestat, yes. Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Second Benny Hendershot,
Yes.
Witt,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Moses,
Yes.
Sparkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Moving on to item F, Item F was sent out to each of you, I believe directly by the superintendent or Sherry. And that is the school resource officer for St. Clair County. That encompasses the schools in St. Clair County, and obviously the high school is the primary focus of where that SRO is stationed, and it is to enter into an agreement with St. Clair County. Could I have a motion to enter into that agreement, and then we can have some discussion if we need to?
I'll make the motion.
All right, how about a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion by Hendershot, supported by Moses. Any discussion or questions about the agreement with the St. Clair County Sheriff?
This is our standard policy and situation that we've had set up for years. There hasn't been any changes, correct, Mr. Woodside?
Yeah, this is a contract that you guys approve every 3 years. What we have done is address the cost, obviously, with the school closures and not using the resource officer. We have addressed those costs. But this is the same 3-year contract that you've done 3 years ago. And if you notify, the board can always cancel by notification by March 1st.
Any additional questions of Superintendent Woodside?
Who's the officer that we currently have? Who's the current?
The-
officer? Larry Fajardo.
Larry's been there a couple years, hasn't he, Superintendent?
Yes, yep. I mean, I think as you know, the board, we've discussed it. We have a resource officer at our middles. We have resource officers visiting our elementaries, and they really do a great job of making connections with students. And if we have issues in regards to students planning misbehavior or bringing things to school they shouldn't, the resource officer has done a great job to, kind of cut that off before it even happens.
Yeah, I'll jump in there as well, Mr. Woodside. I interacted with Deputy Fajardo at one of the football games. He came outside of the school because he wanted to see his students. So he's very entrenched into the school. I believe he actually coaches one of the sports for us over there at the varsity level. So Deputy Fajardo has been an asset, honestly, over at the high school, and has certainly helped us out a lot. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, Mr. Middlestate, yes. Mr. Giroux?
Yes.
Mr. Secretary Henderson?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Moses?
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. On to item G, labeled board organization. Mr. Middlestat?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just want to discuss some concerns I have and how, as a board moving forward, specifically, I've had concerns for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 meetings that you've chaired concerning violating certainly board policies, but also Open Meetings Act. And then this has to do with the letter of agreement issues that we had where made agreements without calling a board meeting. You had lawyer opinions to not just against signing the agreement, yet you did. Then when you came to the board, gave us the impression that the attorney had agreed to the agreement, and then we went ahead and agreed it. We find out later on that you had 2 lawyer opinions that said the opposite. Then after we got all those opinions, we made a major issue by not jumping in to resolve this issue with who signs the agreement. Kind of put the pressure on the superintendent for over a week and a half, caused distress within many people in the district concerning whether we agreed or the board looked bad in terms of somehow we didn't have any support for teachers in terms of we didn't agree to the agreement because we didn't have a signature on the agreement, and somehow we were causing distress with teachers. And then just generally running the meetings that we've had. And I just have a real concern with how you've been operating as president. So I thought at least put that on the table because I have a big concern about how the meetings and how the board's being operated in terms of the district.
Okay, sir. Is there anything else?
I don't know if anybody else has any discussion on that or not. So I'm at a point, Mr. Green, that I certainly don't believe that you have stood up for the position of the district in terms of your leadership. So I'd just like to, again, I'd like to make a motion to, as the policy did and as you did previously, is that I think we need new leadership in the board. We need to have a different president on the board. So I'd like to move that we remove you from office at this time.
All right. Is there a second to Mr. Middlestat's motion?
I support.
All right. Motion by Middlestat, supported by Hendershot. Let's have some discussion. As much as I love you showing up an hour late to meetings and making agenda changes and leaving meetings an hour early. If this is what you feel is the best thing for Anchor Bay, certainly we'll put it to a vote. I certainly appreciate you bringing this up at this meeting in November, knowing full well in January that that there's 2 new board members that are going to be seated. I operate the best to my ability. I communicate with the superintendent as often as possible, often multiple times a day. I'm out in my community. I'm interacting with parents, students, teachers, building administrators, central administration. What you've accused me of in far as Open Meeting Act violation, certainly there is a prosecutor's office in Macomb County that could look into your allegations, the same as past board presidents have been looked into and actually been found to have committed Open Meeting Act violations. And secondly, as far as the discussion about signing or misrepresenting the letter of understanding, I vehemently disagree with you. I had multiple conversations with Ms. Swem that weekend. I involved Todd Rathbun in those discussions. Nowhere at any point did anyone tell me not to enter into that agreement. I did put a sunset clause into that agreement because I could not get in front or with my board. You've accused me of entering into negotiations, and it's probably a good time to clear that up as well. I believe, and you can ask Mr. Rathbun, Mr. McDonald, Ms. Gonzalez, I believe I said a total of 5 to 10 words in that entire meeting. And I believe I was actually talking to Mr. Case and I asked him a question about some PPE. You've made allegations and made these indications that I'm running amok as the board president that simply aren't true. Certainly, I understand that there may be a desire by the current sitting board members to make a change. But what I can likely tell you is whatever change you make today is pretty likely to be undone January or February. So with that being said, I will open it up and call on specific board members to if they have comments, and I'll start with Mr. Moses. Do you have a comment on the motion, sir?
No, just I vehemently disagree with Mr. Middlestat. I think you've been doing a great job. And I guess we just got to wait for the vote.
All right, sir. Ms. Birkmeyer.
I also agree with Mr. Middlestat. Mr. Green has been very accessible to me as a board member. And I have no problems with Mr. Green's running of our meetings and for his presidency.
Mr. Giroux.
Oh, boy. Well, this just adds to more of the circus that this board has been.
Certainly does.
On it. I will say my problems with you, Mr. Green, are your constant undermining of the superintendent. I get you don't like him. I get there's 3 people on this board that don't like him. I mean, that's no secret in this district. It's no secret that there's a move by the current board members and ones that are probably coming in here in January, as you say, with what they're gonna do. What gets me is when we put, as I stated to you a couple of board meetings ago, when we put the students and parents in the middle of the bickering up here. One thing over the past 2 weeks that I've really tried to reach out to parents and teachers, and listening to these parents are like, you guys are just becoming an embarrassment. And they're right. We're bickering back and forth like a bunch of high school kids. But on that, whether it was legal, not legal, LOA, you're right. You meet with the superintendent, you work with them. I've been in committee meetings with you. Everything's good. And then we get to meetings and he's the worst thing ever. And you see public outrage and you don't, as the board president, take initiative to put out a statement that would quell all the bullcrap. Ms. Berkmeyer, you say you've been getting information. You and Mike are probably the only ones. If you recall, Mr. Green, I sent you an email a week and a half ago saying we need to have a meeting to discuss these cases, to discuss what's going on. I'm not going to sit here and say you're not doing anything, but my problem is that your hatred for the superintendent causes you to just undermine them, badger them, and when it affects the parents and students of this district, I think that's a problem. Your job is to represent the school, represent the board. My understanding is you went into the negotiations, you caucus with the teachers. As a board president, you shouldn't be doing that. And it might be hearsay. You could, I'm sure, talk to it, but with this coming up, that's what I would say. And I think there's some things that need to be done. I've talked to you about it. I've talked to Ms. Berkmeyer. I've talked to Mr. Moses. There's some moves that need to be made, and you guys are unwilling to do them. You'll pit the public against people and continue this complete vitriol out there when we can make a move that probably needs to be made and we can move on. And that takes the board president showing leadership, not getting caught up in high school games out there. And I just don't see you doing it. And when I'm being told that, no, we don't want to do that. We want to drag someone's name through the mud for a year or 2 years. That's just immature. And it's not, since I've been on this board, as even the 4 new board members, I'll include myself in that, other than this pandemic, and we changed our view on that quite a bit, but what are we talking about students, about what we're going to change? Mike, you and I talked about wanting to start a trades program.
John.
So I'll finish up, Mr. Green. So what I'll say to you is, how that relates to you is, you're not bringing this board together. You're not trying to bring the two sides. There's obviously a 3-4, 3-3, and then 1. People call me, oh, you're in between, whatever. But it's just not what should be going on. And I think some things need to happen before the end of the year. And I don't think you're the guy to do it.
Well, I certainly appreciate your honest feedback. I can certainly tell you that, you know, I guess you taking to social media is what you consider making a statement. You don't see me making statements on social media because it's not where I belong. It's not where board president belongs. You know, the public opinion is what it is. Jumping on New Baltimore Now and making a statement about one thing or another isn't my gig. I avoid social media. It's unfortunate you don't think that I'm spending time and working with the superintendent. Matter of fact, I don't think in the past 3-4 months since I've been the president that I have, I don't know your exact words, made the superintendent look foolish or thrown mud at him or whatever you've described. But nonetheless, I will move on to Ms. DeWitt if you have some comments you'd like to share.
I think that there are major concerns with some of the things that have happened since you took office. And I do not agree with how the letter of agreement was handled. I had concerns that your signature disappeared when it was put to the superintendent again. And I think that there have been several times where decisions are made and then suddenly just minds are changed very quickly in a different direction. And I question if there is some influence that is exerted from others that I do agree with Mr. Drew, that prevents us from your moving us forward to do what we can for kids. And that has been one of my major issues working with this board for the last 2 years. There have been very, very few initiatives brought forward. The infighting has been definitely noticeable. I think that the board has to have leadership that's willing to take a stand. And unfortunately, the social media has really influenced a lot of opinions, and much of that, what is posted, has simply been distorted or not true. So I guess that I do agree there have been a number of things since you've taken office that I did not agree with.
Well, I can appreciate that. I actually said it 2 meetings ago that I preferred some healthy debate and not rubber stamping things. But the one thing I can assure you, Marie, is that you didn't see me on social media saying anything to anybody, because I don't. I guess that brings us over to Ms. Hendershot.
I will say that in the last 2 years, there has not been a student focus. The new members to the board have come in and done nothing but promote a hostile working environment for current board members and for our superintendent and past assistant superintendent, who is no longer with us because of that hostile working environment. I can say that Mr. Drew went out of his way to attempt to move forward without that type of environment, attempted to diffuse it every last time that he could, sometimes to no avail. There has been nothing but inconsistency. And I will tell you that those of you sitting up there smirking have miscommunicated to the public a lot of lies and blatant falsehoods to only promote their own well-being and their own personal agendas, and they should be ashamed of themselves. Because it hasn't been, let me finish. It hasn't been about students. I've been on this board for 10 years, and I can remember days where Mr. Middlestat or myself and Mrs. DeWitt would argue about what program was the best for a student. We haven't done that in 2 years. All we do is continue to throw egg at each other and not be able to stand up and be honest and have integrity and try to move successfully forward, because there's too many hidden agendas that I wish the public could know some of these private moments that we can't share due to confidentiality and other issues and board policies and procedures. Some of them will be very distraught at some of the things that has been going on. We are one of the best districts, not only in Macomb County, but in the state of Michigan. We have some of the lowest administrative costs across the state. Our teachers are utmost professionals. Our administrators are fabulous, yet they're consistently dragged into an arena that they shouldn't be. And that has to be the heart of a leader, has to be what is the overall best for the community, for the students, and for the staff, and not if they like somebody or don't like somebody. Believe me, I've seen things that I've liked and not liked and disliked, and attempted to say that, you know, that is not what I'm voting on. That's not what I'm talking. That's not what we're talking about, and pushed it to the side because that's what a working professional does. But I honestly can say that there's been a lot of hearsay and conjecture. But when you really look at the numbers, I was enrolled in this district as a student, and I can tell you it has grown significantly over the last 20 years. And do I like everything that comes out of the central administration's office? In all honesty, no. There are things that me and Mr. Woodside have whole honestly disagreed with and professionally agreed to disagree. That's what working professionals do. We don't go around and attempt to stab people in the back just to simply get them fired. And it is blatantly obvious, and has been for the last 2 years, that the only goal that some board members have is to fire Mr. Woodside. And if that's what you want to do, get it done and over with. Because he's not done anything to deserve it. And it's not right that we take out personal vendettas to simply try to make a point. And you know what? And I can go back to a day, Mr. Green, that you sat in the audience and verbally attacked one of Mr. Woodside's children years ago. I remember it vividly. And I think that as a grown adult, to drag a child into a situation that formed an opinion for me, that I've tried very hard to give you the benefit of the doubt to change. I have really tried to work with you and just, you know, say, okay, people get angry in the heat of the moment. They say things they don't mean. We've all done it. You know, we're all human beings. We're, you know, no one is infallible. You know, let's try to work together. But it just seems to be harder and harder as time goes on. And I really think, and I really hope that these new board members coming on, that they call and ask questions and get honest feedback and really make an informed decision from this point forward about what's best, because they have promised the community for what is best for the students, and that they need to be as educated as possible and not just get one side's opinion, that they should be taking both sides. And I really hope to hear from both of them. And we'll share my feedback, and they can take it or leave it. And I hope they reach out to administrators and ask for their input, and they can take it or leave it. And current board members and sitting board members, past board members, and take it or leave it. But do your research, and not just, social media is a ridiculous format for any adult professional person to sit in, participate in anything more than sharing the fun pictures of their Christmas vacation. Anything beyond that shows me a very ridiculous side of a human being. And I think that it should be nothing more than just a fun tool to use between friends, and not as a tool to rip apart people, to degrade people, and to bring them down, because that just shows the value of who you are as a human being. So in that regard, I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Giroux that we've had a very difficult time moving forward. And I really had hoped that, you know, we could pull it together in these last few months. And I do appreciate, Mr. Green, all the weekends that you have put in, because I do know you have attempted to, you know, hold the meetings, to go to meetings, to talk to people, to go to the buildings. And I commend you on that. It's a lot of time. You don't get paid for that. It's a lot of time out of your very busy lives. I appreciate that. But at the same token, sometimes I think we participate in things that are outside what a board member really is. And one of the things that significantly was disturbing was the handling of the LOA. And you know what? I will give you the benefit of the doubt that it is a very difficult times that we are living in right now. And I think you were attempting to try to fix something that was very challenging at the time, but I think it could have been handled differently.
So I appreciate your feedback. I think that's everybody. Certainly I agree with your social media synopsis, because I'm not on it for anything else than sharing pictures of my kids and my dogs and some vacations. So hopefully there were some other board members that took heed to that. Other board members that consider social media as a way of making a statement. It's not appropriate for a board president to be making statements on New Baltimore Now and responding to complaints and concerns. So with that being said,
I got one more, because that's the third time you said that. I was not implying that you should make a statement across Facebook. I never made statements across Facebook when I was board president. I made some statements currently on there because it's getting old what's going on in this board, and the parents don't know. And I've met with multiple who have started campaigns themselves to get rid of certain people and talk to them. What I was getting at by a statement, Mr. Green, and you know as well as I know, what you put out there as far as that LOA was wrong. It made the superintendent look bad. You undermined them. You worked with them, and then you didn't correct Ms. Berkmeyer when she said that Mr. Woodside wasn't around that whole weekend. You didn't. You made it sound like the lawyer wrote the agreement when she didn't. I talked to the lawyer. She wanted to come to the next meeting. I asked to bring her. She wasn't here. What I was getting at by a statement was a public statement. You can put them out. You can put an email out to the parents. You can put an email out to the teachers to quell the stuff. You know when things are coming. You tell me all the time. I get 350 phone calls. What I'm saying is this time dictates leadership, not get in the mud. And you can't say, I'm working with you, but then behind the scenes just be kicking his legs out from underneath him. It was a prohibitive subject. You claimed during the meeting, it was a question whether it was or it wasn't. And at the time, the board only had one of those lawyer opinions. There was two. We didn't have the other one. You did. And once you knew, and he said it in the meeting, he wasn't going to sign it. And for all those parents out there listening who thinks, again, because this is a little circus-ish, but it's a prohibitive subject that of bargaining put in place by the state legislature a few years back. I think it's great that Jamie fights for it. She doesn't agree with that. She wanted it in there. Good for her. The superintendent knows he can't sign it. The board president can, and we voted for you to do it.
No, you didn't. There was no directive for the board president.
Your name was on the board, the one that came before the board, and at that meeting, the superintendent said he wasn't. Now, why would he, when we got board members that kick his teeth in for every little thing he does to try to fire him? Guys are gonna end up getting this board sued. If people think that you were just gonna do these things, and any parent that wants to talk about it, I'll show you all kinds of things that he could probably sue us for. That's gonna cost us a ton of money. So we can play these games all we want, but all I wanted to say was, it wasn't saying make a statement on Facebook. Make a statement to the public to say, don't worry about it. There will be school tomorrow. We handled this. Hell, I called this union president and said, how are we gonna sign this? Take 15 out. He took 15 out, he signed it. It was done the next day. That should have been you.
We can go around and around all day long, Mr. Drew. I think there's a motion on the floor. Mr. Secretary, why don't you call your shameful motion?
Okay, Mr. Middlestate, yes. Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Secretary Hendershot,
Yes.
Mr. Witt,
Yes.
Green,
No.
Moses,
No.
Burkmeyer,
No.
okay.
All right, I believe at this point in time that Ms. Hendershot should take over. And as obviously I'm just speaking as a trustee now. But I would make a motion to have Ms. Hendershot take over the meeting at this point and elect a new board president to take effect immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Is there a motion that someone would like to make in regards to a new president to move forward?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like to move that turn Mr. Drew back to his president.
I will
Mr.
support
Mr. Who?
Drew.
I'll support.
Okay, Mr. Middlestat, if you'd like to call roll, unless there's any discussion.
I
Hearing no
think,
discuss- Oh, go ahead, Mr. Green.
yeah, I think the childish antics are just continuing with this board. And as I already referenced, it's likely there'll be a change made in January or February. I think it's shameful that we have outgoing board members that are making motions this dramatic and this catastrophic. Thank you.
Well, I like to add that I think it's shameful that you assume you already know the vote of 2 incoming new board members. That should be their decision based on their information and not what you think that they will be doing. So why don't we wait and give those new board members the opportunity to do their due diligence as required and make their decisions and not yours. Mr.
I agree.
Middlestat?
We will afford them the opportunity. It's just a good thing you won't be around to see it.
And that was a low blow, Mr. Green, and it only shows your level of maturity. Mr. Middlestat, go ahead.
Well, I would also know the organizational meetings in, not in January. So I made the motion of Mr. Middlestate, yes. Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Secretary Hendershot,
Yes.
Mr. Witt,
Yes.
Green,
No.
Moses,
In the spirit of reaching across the aisle and trying to heal this, I'm going to vote yes.
thank you. Ms. Burkmeyer,
No.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Drew, would you like to finish out the meeting?
All right. Communications.
You want me to unmute Jamie?
Yeah, does she have her hand up?
She does not.
I guess unmute her and just ask her.
Yes, I don't know how to put my hand up. Sorry.
Sorry.
All right. So first of all, I would like to address this whole social media debacle that you've all been talking about. Obviously, personally, I've had a lot of, I've been the sacrificial lamb of a lot of things in this district. My question is this: where is the real leadership in this district? Who should be the face of leadership in this district? Which person should be the one that we are looking up to at this point? Should it not be our superintendent? I wouldn't know because he hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. I have asked for 3 years for this board to do something. It is sad. It is discouraging. I'm getting emotional because I'm so tired of this. It's embarrassing. Going back to the LOA, had Mr. Green not stepped in, we would not have had school. Mr. Woodside refused to sign the LOA. You can talk about prohibited topics all you want. Look at LOAs across the county. They are not enforceable. It's a sign of good faith to your employees. Mr. Woodside was willing to put the entire district on hold and not sign that LOA. Lisa Swem is one of the most respected attorneys I've ever worked with. She would never give bad advice to this district. I am so discouraged and so upset by this meeting. Again, I am sorry, just moving on to another topic. As I stated in many emails to this board, now that we're all off track with this other issue, every district in Macomb County has shut down K-8 face-to-face instruction in one way or another. Whether they've extended it for 3 weeks, whether they've taken the week off from Thanksgiving and the week off from Christmas. I posed a question to all of you earlier, and I'm going to pose it to you again. What are we doing in Anchor Bay to keep our staff and students safe that other districts in Macomb County cannot do? I have not heard the answer as of yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other union presidents wanting to speak? See anybody? I think that's it. We'll go to our second open forum comments. Now, Tim, and during the first one, I had gotten a message from a parent. If there's a iPhone Renee Harmony, she wanted to talk in the first one, I guess, filled out a form, but never got.
If they don't match their name.
No, I know, but can you find her?
I can search for iPhone again.
iPhone Renee Harmony.
I don't see iPhone.
Are you out there?
You can search as well. To see her.
Yeah, I don't see her.
It's kind of hard to know if they don't have.
All right, we'll go to the, I guess, go to the hands that are up, and then if we see her come up, we'll get her. You want me just to do it, just unmute them?
Yeah, I mean, I
Kit
can.
Kat 24. I'll ask him when he gets on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, can you please state your name first?
Yes, Carrie Kempinski. I live at 48254 Mallard Drive, Chesterfield.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just have a couple questions. Is there any law that makes it mandatory for parents to test their children for COVID?
What's that? Todd, you want to field that one? You're welcome.
No, I'm not required. I'm not clear that there is a law that requires that your child test for COVID-19.
Okay, so it's not mandatory for the parents to actually
No,
test
I
their
didn't
kid
think it was.
if they have symptoms.
Correct.
Okay, my other question is that if a child does test positive, if the parents did have them tested and they tested positive, is it required by law or mandatory that they contact the school and tell them about it?
I don't believe that is either.
No, what'll
Mr.
happen-
Woodside will take that.
Yeah, the health department would let us know anytime someone tests positive.
But is it mandatory for the parents to contact the health department?
Well, the health department,
No, if you go get tested, the health department's gonna know you tested positive.
Through the doctor's office or the clinic or wherever you have it?
Yes.
Okay, they'll contact the health department. Okay, because it just made me wonder if we were getting true numbers in the elementary. Because I didn't know if it was mandatory, they had to, even get them tested.
Yeah, the elementary numbers, if you looked at the zip code or the health department, they're using, it's beyond the school, like if someone had COVID or contracted it at home or, not at the school. What the school's tracking, what we put out is what is happening at school when we have outbreaks.
But yet, if a child has symptoms, it's not mandatory they get tested. So you may
Correct.
not even know that.
Yeah,
That was all. Thank you.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Go to Brian Powers.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so just want to follow up on what happened here tonight. This was nothing but staged political theater. It was sour grapes from a previous board president, still upset that he was overthrown a couple years ago in this exact fashion. Sour grapes from someone who's upset about an election loss. As you said, Mr. Green, this is over in 2 months. This little gang of four that's developed on this board is about to be broken up, and the days of ruling this board with an iron fist just because you've been around forever are going to come to an abrupt end. 2021 is going to be a new day for this school board, and that's a very good thing. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and lob stones at somebody who's trying to lead through unprecedented times. And it's funny because no one in the world has ever dealt with this right now, what we're going through. And when it's convenient, people want to say, well, these are the rules and we got to follow them by the letter of the law. But then when it's not convenient, we say, well, these are unprecedented times and we got to make tough decisions and do the best we can. So Mr. Green, you handled this situation tonight with a lot more class than your opponents on this board have. And I just wanted to personally thank you for your leadership the last couple of months, because it was much needed after the abyss that this district was kind of going through in the early days of August, when the tough decisions weren't being made that need to be made. So I'm looking forward to 2021 and this new board, and I think most of the parents are as well. Have a great night.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Dennis Richards.
Dennis Richards. First and foremost, I'd like to congratulate Mr. DeRue, Mr. Middlestat, Ms. DeWitt, and Ms. Hendershot for another embarrassing evening. It's downright unprofessional in a public format. Slander and personal attacks. I was elected on change, and I promise you more change is coming. We have one more meeting until January. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Miss Stephanie Richards.
Can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
Stephanie Richards, 9980 Arnold Road. I had something to say, and I'm still going to say it because my focus here is the students, unlike half of you sitting on the board, which made it very apparent to us parents by what you guys just spent more time, as my husband just said, slandering one another than actually focusing on the students. So very embarrassing. So glad change is coming. And now what I wanted to say, I come here today to express my deep concern for the downhill spiral this district is on. It seems that elementary might be working better, but with your decision to go virtual last week for middle and high school, and with the multiple days we had to close the high school due to teacher shortages, we must admit this plan isn't working for the secondary secondary part of the district. We need to stop what isn't working and come up with a better plan. If we change nothing, then when our students go back in January, we can only expect that we will run into the same issues. We need to take a proactive approach versus a reactive approach. We have been taking right now is failing our students. We are at best giving them a subpar education. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it and we can change the future. We are at the crossroads. You can choose to go down this path, continuing to fail our students, or you can choose to make a change. I urge you to learn from our mistakes and make a change. I don't have all the answers. No one of us individually does. We need to work as a team with district employees at all levels and include parent input to create a better back to school plan. Districts across the state and country are dealing with this. Many of them, like us, are also failing, but many of them are succeeding. We need to reach out to them and see what is working for others and evaluate and see if those options are feasible in our district. No plan we create is going to please everyone, but whatever plan we create needs to be done so that all students are geared to get the best education we can offer during these times. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anthony Giuliano.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Anthony Giuliano, 49562 Regatta. First, I would like to say your behavior this evening for most of you is abysmal. You talk about trying to be professional in that. You guys are a joke. I will say I commend Mr. Green for trying to get us through these unprecedented times, which you guys as a whole seem to ignore. You, Mr. DeRue, constantly say how all this infighting and bickering and this behavior should be stopped and everything else, and then you guys go and pull this kind of shenanigans. It's utterly ridiculous. I mean, come on, you're Captain Waffle. You flop so much on different topics, it's ridiculous. And that's not what a good leader does either. A good leader makes the tough decisions and sticks with it. He has his reasons. People can respect a good leader if they're thoughtful in their decision process and stick by their guns. And yes, you take other people's opinions into consideration, but you don't waffle. I've seen you change your mind like 4 times at any given meeting. And as far as social media goes, you make posts on social media and then you get lit up and take your post down. That, I think, is what was referenced, not a president going on and posting on Facebook. So let's not confuse the issues. And Mr. Middlestat had it out for Mr. Green from the beginning, since he was unseated and he doesn't like it, and he's added items to the agenda damn near every meeting.
Sir, I allowed you to come after me because that's me and I'm chairing the meeting and I'm okay with it. But per the guidelines of the board comment, you're not supposed to comment with anybody's name.
Spit it out. Spit it out. Come on. Let's stop stuttering.
Okay, you can show your maturity, that's fine, but let's stay by the rules, please. Done? All right. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? All right, we'll go to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll support.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Vote by roll.
Mr. Middlestate, yes. Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
Secretary Hendershot,
Yes.
Mr. Witt,
Yes.
Green,
No.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer.
Yes.
All right, superintendent comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to, add the plan that we do every 30 days, the return to learn plan, that is developed by, input from staff. When we developed it, even before the school year started, and even when we had the shutdown, that's done with discussions with the teacher union president. We've taken input from board members. We have a curriculum committee with the board. We have a finance committee. So the return to learn plan was developed with a lot of input. Every 30 days, the board could make changes to it, you know, as we go forward. I also want to share that, you know, as we, you know, when we had this closed down at the end of last school year, and as we continue to, you know, move through this entire COVID issues, there are many groups that we have applauded or appreciated. And I think one of them that I need to add, and I know I've talked about it in the past, is our bus drivers. You know, they've been out there when we did have the closure, getting meals delivered out to families. They pulled together. It wasn't even a question. They pretty much organized how we would succeed in getting that out to families in need. You know, our custodians, as far as making sure the process we've used to sanitize buildings, our food service, who came in during the last closure, and they worked together to get meals out to our students, the maintenance department. So across the board, our support staff, that includes the paras, you know, everybody has pulled together to continue to make the district successful through this, you know, unprecedented time. So I can't say enough how I do appreciate the support staff, bus drivers, food service, custodians, secretaries, paras, you know, maintenance, all of them are the reason why we've been able to reach out to those families in need. And they're also part how we can sanitize and make our buildings safe. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board comments? Ms. Burkmeyer?
Actually find it kind of ironic that all this happened tonight, because I think up until that point at this meeting and the last meeting were some of the most cohesive meetings that we've had almost since my time on the board, but oh well. And I want to thank Mr. Green for his presidency. And, you know, it's funny because I came in onto this board with an open mind. I truly didn't even know I was going to run until like a week or two before that year. Wasn't, you know, it was just something I saw things going on in the district. My kids were young and early in the district. And I just, you know, I saw some things that I wanted to change and have an impact on students. It's funny because for me, what really set the tone of my participation on this board was when I immediately joined the board in January and Mr. Middlestat was president, and he was absolutely 100% unaccessible. Not by email, not by phone, no way. Voicemail full, never responded to one email that I ever wrote. And God knows, we all know, everybody on this board knows, I write a lot of emails. So, and to that extent, at that point, because Mr. Middlestat was ignoring me as well, I didn't get answers from, because I was going through our board policy and going to our president, I wasn't getting information from our superintendent either. So for me, that is exactly what has set the tone for these last 2 years for me on the board. So it's ironic that Mr. Middlestat brings all of this up because it all started with him. That's all I got.
All right. Mr. Moses?
I'm just gonna try to keep it positive here. You know, it's tough when something like this happens. Pat, I want to thank you for being president, and John, congratulate you for being president. And I guess we just gonna try to work together to get through this. See what happens. That's all I got.
Thanks, Mr. Moses. Ms. Hedershot?
I agree with Mr. Moses that, positivity is the better and the higher road to take. But I got to take a little bit back with Ms. Burkmeyer's comments, is I have to say I have never met a more negative person in any of my board experience. The negativity was overwhelming. The hostility was from day one directed at Mr. Woodside. Nobody sits in those closed sessions but board members. Nobody sits and listens to those board communications but board members. It is easy for the outside to toss stones and to talk about change, but change only comes with informed insight and not a single lens. And unfortunately, people get stuck in their lane and don't necessarily like to say, hey, I may not agree, but like Mr. Moses has always attempted to try to find a common ground. Like, hey, where can we come together in the middle, meet halfway? And, I oftentimes didn't hear questions more than I heard accusations. And it almost seems to be that we're replacing one agenda with another agenda. And that's pretty sad. And I'm sorry to see that. I just hope that people don't run with misinformation and that they seek out the truth. Sometimes the truth is very difficult to swallow. And, moving on to some of my concerns, I absolutely am concerned over some of the statements that were made this evening in regards to no one here on this board is recommending that people travel over the holidays. And sometimes I think things get lost in translation. All this board said is that the public moves during holiday seasons. And I've heard a few parents say, you keep talking about, people traveling, and we're not saying we want people to travel. We don't expect that people should travel, but we can't control what people do. We can't control the movement of the public, and that we only hope that we're making wise decisions in regards to keeping our elementary school safe, that they're still face-to-face. And yes, it may be wise, I don't know who said it, to reevaluate that if people are visiting with family on New Year's Eve, that maybe we don't report face-to-face 2 days later, since everybody is well informed in regards to the incubation period before the illness shows its ugly head to people, and that we are hoping to only plan accordingly. I'm glad that the board has given Mr. Woodside and Mr. Cusimano some leeway to make decisions that are best for the district as a whole, the elementary level, the special education students. That needs to be addressed. I hate to hear people just simply criticize who stand outside the bubble. And I really hope that we can support our teachers. And I know there was a few comments about, teachers showing up in pajamas. Well, I can tell you none of my teachers showed up in pajamas. And I didn't have major issues in the very beginning. My children are currently in remote instruction. I know Mr. Moses's children are too, and I'm not speaking for him, but I'm not seeing issues with the remote instruction right now for the children. And I'm hoping that continues to move forward, but I will treat my teachers as working professionals and will support them. And I think what the best way to ensure, if parents want a peace of mind, is I would just like to put out there to your building administrators, Mr. McDonald, I know you're out there listening. And I know Terry's not in right now, but we do have someone stepping in for him, helping out. But really impress upon your administrators to pop into those virtual classrooms on a daily basis so that you can see how that classroom is running. Every single teacher has their Zoom code pre-identified and uses the same one every day. It's very easy for the building administrators to pop into a classroom 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, view what's going on, making sure the teachers have the resources that they need, and that professionalism is being upheld, which I have no doubt it will be upheld. But maybe that will put some teacher or some people in the community's minds to ease that there will be accountability, because I think that's what I heard, is that people want accountability, and that accountability comes from all levels, including this board and our administration and the administration in all of our buildings. Everybody needs to be transparent and honest in working for student achievement and the success of our district, which has been so successful over the past 20 years or more.
Thank you, Ms. Hendershot. Mr. Green?
I really don't have a whole lot to say, Mr. Drew. I generally rise above, for the most part, had a couple little slips tonight, but I usually rise above the harassment, the accusations, and I've done that the past couple of meetings. Weathered the storm, I guess, is what one of the local business owners told me. So it's disappointing that, you know, the results of the vote were what they are tonight, but it won't do me any good or this board any good for me to take shots at anybody else that's on the board. So there's no reason for that. Obviously with great disappointment, because to Mrs. Birkmeyer's point, honestly, I had discussions with administration that our last meeting was very positive and everybody was working together, and it was one of the best meetings that have taken place in the past, 2 years-ish. So it's disappointing after having, a very tumultuous topic and stressful topic last week to hear from administration. They thought the meeting actually went very well, and it was managed very well and handled very well, and that the board performed very well, to get a week later and have what happened tonight happen. But again, sir, there's really no point in beating on anybody who's on the board at this point. It won't really help things any further. So that's I'll leave it at that, sir.
Ms. DeWitt?
I think I share that sentiment, but I would like to say that 2 years ago, the entire start of the, after the election, the entire start of working with the board was, got off to an extremely rocky start. That probably did set the tone for a more adversarial relationship. And that has always been very, very disturbing to me. I feel very sad. I feel sad that we can't just focus, or haven't been able to just focus on moving forward and doing what's best for our kids, and also financially what's best for the entire district and students and staff. So I would hope that as the new year approaches, that there can be a new beginning. I do understand that with this entire pandemic, there really are no good solutions to any of it. My heart goes out to the elementary kids who do struggle tremendously with virtual. And I commend the teachers who, even though they're feeling not safe in the environment they're teaching in, they're saying that they want to continue to do it because they know their kids are learning and that it's going to be better for them. But I also know there's a large population of teachers at elementary that are afraid for not just themselves, but for their families, because daily, they may be exposed because of sheer numbers to the to COVID. When I've talked about data, I do believe that elementary students, the younger they are, that they present with less symptoms. I don't think that anything is done intentionally, but a student doesn't feel well for a couple of days and the parent just sends them back to school, fever's gone, but they actually have had a mildly symptomatic case of it, and that's not helping to stop the spread. So I respect the decision of the board to monitor this, but I also want to express my gratitude to all of those teachers who, in spite of their fears, are coming and trying to do the very best that they can for our students. I've been very grateful to be a part of this district for many years. I've sat in many chairs as a principal, as a director, and then as a board member. I wish that my term was ending under different circumstances, but I just would challenge all those who are going to follow me to please let's start to focus on what's best for kids, to focus on what's going to help this district to again become financially stable. And still believe that I'm very grateful for every experience that I've had within the district, and most especially that I had an opportunity to work with all these wonderful teachers, wonderful kids, and wonderful administrators. So I wish all of you a good holiday, but please stay safe, perhaps revisit how you're going to spend the holiday, but let's do whatever we can to keep everyone safe. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Middlestat?
Thank you. So I'd like to just respond briefly to Ms. Berkmeyer's comments. I know after the November election, even before new 4 board members were on the board, I made arrangements to make sure that they were able to obtain training through the NASB, even though before they were even on the school board. So I remember I sent out notices and information and provided that to all the new board members. In regards to comments about sour grapes, I've worked in this district over 3 decades, and I don't need to be board president to support children and support kids in this district. So I've taken very many roles, and anybody that knows me, I'm more than willing to fit into a support role, whether it's a trustee, secretary, vice president, or president. Work behind the scenes diligently for students and teachers. And anybody who knows me that somehow I've got sour grapes, sure, I was disappointed in the way it occurred, but yeah, my focus has always been, in my success, I guess, has been that I've always supported students and programs, and that's any sour grapes I would have is that we haven't, again, I've supported what Mr. Drew said, we haven't focused on kids or programs. I over the course of 2 years, we would have every 2 or 3 months focused on one crisis after another that we're driven into and issues that are out there. And I'll respond a bit to Mr. Powers. I remember way back when he was just a young soccer player, and I haven't known him since that time, but I know he was a very focused person on things. I see his personality hasn't changed much, but I would assure him that somehow I don't have sour grapes for not being president. I've always, like I said, I've always, my focus has always been on student services and support staff. So I think anybody knows me well, and I'm not a very outgoing political person, but I'm very focused and I've worked hard for the students in this district. So any impressions that it's just sour grapes is totally wrong. And again, my focus is on again, in the spread of what's going to happen in January. We've got a month here to try to get things turned around, get some things done, focused on children again. And we're in this pandemic and all the issues are resolved. But again, we need to get the finances in line. We need to be prepared for what's coming next. And again, that parent with the special ed student or the student, special needs student, you know, we need to make sure they're supported quite well. And I didn't want to get an argument of whose students we serve. We just need to have students that have issues. And, you know, I've had experience with students that have very focused, everything has to be structured quite well, and they do well, and if things are kind of in the air when to turn papers in or what to turn in, it's hard to get into a rhythm. But again, unfortunate things happen today, but I'm looking towards the future, and I think we can get there. And I'm looking forward, again, there's somehow this threat out there that come January, the whole thing's going to crash down and things are going to be changed. I think the issue is we need to make change, make it in a thoughtful way, and not be make a transition there versus step off the cliff and totally change direction. We need to make sure we flow because we're in the mid-year of the students in this district, and unfortunately, how the legislature set up boards that they have a whole brand new leadership and come in mid-year is just a disaster for school districts because, and the way the districts are run, we used to have 1 or 2 people come on the board at a time. So there was always a general transition. Change occurred that didn't come immediate, but change did occur. And this dramatic change, students and staff and teachers need consistency. And that's what we need to do. We can't go every other week trying to figure out what we're going to do next. We'll go with the punches in terms of what the situations occur, but we need to have consistency. And I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that come January, we'll still have a positive direction for this board and be student focused and take our responsibility serious. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, I guess the only thing I'll say is, you know, people say I waffle, I go back and forth. I came out of this board to got elected 2 years ago to try to do good for kids, try to do good for the district. Just like I'm sure all of you, I think some of you have a singular focus, some vindictiveness. You know, Mr. Green, you orchestrated it when it was us that, you know, I'm obviously truly the middle as it stands right now until you're right in January, and you quite possibly will be right back to your position. But I've tried to work with both sides. I've tried to look at things in a, even-handed manner where I take both sides of the story, you see what's truthfully there, and I don't, run with it when it's not the right thing to do. And, now it's come full circle and back here again. I just think there's a couple moves that need to be made before the end of the year. So that this district doesn't continue down the path it's going right now with the negativity, the circus. I'm not going to say you did all bad as president, but I think you had a focus of going after a certain person. So, and as far as the Facebook and, me putting stuff out there, yeah, it's hard to see misinformation being spewed, lies. And then I take some of them down because I started calling those parents on them. I'm talking to them. I'll ask the 2 parents who spoke about me tonight that don't know me, never met me, call me. My number's out there. It'll be out there again tonight. Let's sit down. You can yell at me. You can say whatever you want, but let's sit down. Let's talk about the facts. I'll talk to you with truth and facts and won't lie to you. Have I made mistakes? Yes, we all have. But at the end of the day, I try to do what's best for this district, try to remain some professionalism. Obviously tonight, no, I will agree, but neither was it 2 years ago. Mr. Green and Ms. Burkmeyer and Mr. Moses when we did that. So it is what it is at this point. We'll finish out the year. The new year, yeah, you might have this board that you guys are already talking about what you're going to do and whatever. But maybe that singular focus might be gone. So with that, I'll take a motion to, well, first, before that, I wanted to end on a positive note. This last weekend, I ran into Chief Kirsten with the Chesterfield Public Safety. And he was asking about using our pool for, the Chesterfield swim and dive, or, swim and dive, the Chesterfield Public Safety Dive Team. And, he got a hold of Mr. Woodside, and they're gonna use our pool as their, training facility. I think that's a good thing for the school district, good thing for the, Chesterfield Dive Team to be able to practice and possibly be able to save a life out there. So with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Moses,
I'll support.
supported by Ms. Akaveti Hendershot. Vote by roll.
Ms. Brookmeyer? Ms. Brookmeyer?
Yes.
Moses?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Witt?
Yes.
Ms. Hendershot?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Ms. Middlestate, yes. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.